just like we would normally, is disposable gloves, one on, one off, soap dispensers. We had our disinfectants everywhere. We were extra careful about it.
We're probably not going to allow any walk-ins for a while just because that's extra foot traffic.
I want everyone who enters my
I'd like to call the Tuesday, July 28th, 2020 meeting of the City of Pittsburgh Commission to order. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just to clarify, there's several opportunities tonight for public input. I see a lot of you are probably here regarding one agenda item. You can either choose to share your thoughts during public input, or you can also share your thoughts during the public hearing, which is a little bit different than I told you, Dr. and Mrs. Sigley. So at whichever point you would like to share your input. Those coming forward, you can speak without your mask. If you would get close to the mic so that people at home can hear you, and please limit your remarks to around 3 minutes.
Don, I have a question. If they choose to speak in the public at this time, we as commissioners can't ask them questions.
Well, in theory, during the public hearing, not so much either. What our practice would be to take your concerns and questions, and I'm assuming that most of them will be related to the last agenda item, and we can talk through and any concerns you bring. But yes.
So at the end of the meeting, we could ask questions if we have any of the residents. All right, thanks.
So is there anyone that would like to come forward under public comments, public input? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Anyone have any of the consent agenda?
Wait a minute.
Whoa. We've got.
Oh, okay. Please state your name and your address.
Can you say take this off?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I'm Mike Zafuda. I live on 8 Deer Run Lane. Excuse me. I take these off. Last night when we were here, not a single person spoke out against the development per se. We came here trying to get answers, and I think we're upset with the process. We wanted clarification and plans, as we haven't been privy to them prior to last night's meeting. We had questions about safety, traffic, water flow, and the roadways. And I got to be honest, I came away from here with more concerns than when I came in. I don't have any personal, and I don't think any of us do, have any personal or professional problem with Nate or Bart. These guys they work hard, they're trying to make a living, and we don't fault them for that at all. And I personally, excuse me, I want to publicly thank them because they took the time last night after the meeting to talk to my wife Carly and I and clarify some things personally, and it was a productive conversation which I think will continue beyond what's decided, and I appreciate them for that. But what I'm here to talk about primarily is I was really disappointed, and the last night was a little disconcerting to me, is how the meeting was handled. And it's not because of the decision that was made. I came in expecting that decision, to be honest with you. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but that's what I expected to happen. But it's how it was reached, and I'm kind of naive to these sorts of things, but it sure seemed like the proper processes weren't followed. Questions I don't think were adequately answered. Our proverbial can was kicked down the road regarding how funding, that is taxes and fees, are going to pay for the infrastructure improvements that are going to have to be required once this is all said and done. And how we're going to pay for the studies, or are there going to be studies for traffic flow and water flow? At times, and no offense to Laura, the chairperson, it almost seemed like she was talking herself into how she could vote for this, how she could come to a positive conclusion. And she kind of talked around the issues that we had brought up, and they were never really addressed, in my opinion. Several, I feel like, non-answers were given by city employees regarding the future plans for this area and the ramifications to not just our neighborhood, but to the areas around it, Kings Highway, Quincy, and so on. It seems that this agenda was pushed through without abiding by the rules, guidelines, or ordinances. I asked, or I suggested last night, if there was any way that we could consider tabling it for 30 days that would allow us to talk to Nate and Bart, and they said there's a kind of a time crunch on this regarding the RHID development. I understand that, but it doesn't feel like it feels like it's being rushed through without adequate forethought, and all we're asking for is to make sure that this is planned right and planned well. And I'm not in a political crowd by choice, but I try to follow what's happening in the city, and I think we all do. Our neighborhood, I think if you look at who makes it up, we're all in favor of Pittsburgh growing. It helps all of us, but our neighborhood specifically. We all want what's best for Pittsburgh. And I know all of you guys and ladies in one way or another, and I respect the job that you do, and I thank you for the job that you do, because it's a thankless job most of the time. But this isn't, it's in my backyard situation. It's in my front yard, and the front yard is Deer Run Lane. And the way the plans are set up now is you're expecting 121 potential new homes to flow to Quincy on Deer Run Lane. And it's not adequately built for that. It was a county road. There's no curbing, there's no guttering, there's no storm drainage, there's no sidewalks. There's big safety issues to be considered. And I understand that that may be considered, but that doesn't give us any solace knowing, well, we may talk about this down the road. I mean, we would like to have some sort of answers as best that they can be provided, rather than, we'll address it when the time comes. And I'm concerned, as I said, I'm not involved in any of this. I felt like last night was a little bit of a debacle. And if that's the way the city runs things, it's concerning to me that's how we do things here, because it just didn't seem like it was, I'm not going to say it wasn't above board. I don't want to make that accusation, but it doesn't seem like the rules that are written down were followed. And if the rules can be stretched for one person, does that mean they can be stretched for everyone? Or do we abide by the ordinances for everybody? And I hope that's not the case, because we all love Pittsburgh. We want what's best for Pittsburgh, but I was honestly embarrassed last night for the city of Pittsburgh. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public input?
We'll go. Because this is going to be a bit redundant, and I think it will be for all of us, but this caught my eye. I was sitting here tonight waiting. The City of Pittsburgh Forward Together.
I'm sorry, could you please state your name and your address?
I'm sorry, Paige Wilson, 2203 Porter Lane. But the together piece, I think, is missing from what we experienced last night. Echoing what Mike just said, some of the questions I have specifically are, how can a preliminary and a final plat be approved in the same meeting when we were at least 20 minutes into the dialogue and conversation around that, with the screen up there with that plat on there? Nobody sitting in the seats you're sitting in really knew if it were the preliminary or the final plat. So I would pretty much bet that the people sitting in your seats couldn't tell us what the modifications, if there were any, from the preliminary to the final. So that's disconcerting. It's apparent that the financials that are driving the RHID are a major factor. I personally thought that Nate and Bart would have come to the table with their I's dotted and their T's crossed and every checkbox marked to refute the issues that they knew they would be challenged with from the Eastport residents around what they're doing. I can say firsthand, Nate and Bart built the house that I'm living in now and came back to Pittsburgh to retire in. So it's not about what they can do from a building perspective. I just don't feel like there's been enough conscious decision on the implications of everything that's involved with what they're doing with the housing that they're targeting for this subdivision. The city pushing this through is truly not in the best interests of, first and foremost, the new homeowners in the subdivision that they're looking at. And I don't feel like they're considering the years of the people that are in the Eastport subdivision that we're in now. There's a marked difference between the word may and will. And we heard may on Quincy, on Free Kings Highway, on Deer Run, that's not going to provide any of us with the comfort that will be done to support both the new subdivision and the existing housing, traffic, and security that's part of Eastport.
Thank you.
Ron Sigley, One Deer Run Lane. There's safety issues involved here and water issues. The watershed is not adequately prepared at the present time. We're not sure where the water is going to go, going on the west side of this proposed addition. We're not, as I would echo what Dr. Safuda said, we're not opposed to the housing itself. We'd love to have neighbors up that way. However, also, as he said, we need more finite answers of what's going to happen. You're looking at the present time on phase one of potentially 40 or 43 houses showing up. On phase two, as many as 120 altogether. The road systems, the way they're platted at the present time, won't adequately hold that. There's no exit to 4th Street. And you have the high school just down the road a bit, and right now, Free Kings becomes a drag strip track at times. And also rowing down Porter Lane, we have new housing, new children, more children than we've ever had in that area before. And I'm concerned about the safety issue of those children. We get kids trying to race through down Porter Lane onto Deer Run and then to beat their buddies on Quincy. The road itself, Free Kings Highway, is got ditches on both sides. It's a poor road. It's an unsafe road. It's a somewhat narrow road. And we'd like the city to look at this situation before you add another potentially 120-some homes to that region. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Marietta, 4 Deer Run Lane. Paige stole some of my thunder, but I'm going to kind of reiterate it here in that I'm reading section 104, and it's talking about a preliminary, and it says that you must have a preliminary approved, and then the final must be presented after. And I think Dr. Suda said it best, and until the last 5 minutes of the meeting, they didn't even know they had a final. They finally went and found an email and brought it up on the screen. And so my concern is that we're not following the rule that the commission has said in the past, that we just kind of pushed through what we wanted, and that I'm asking that the commission go back and look at the rules and see if they were actually followed. That you can't do a preliminary and a final. They did do one thing right. They voted a preliminary and then they voted a final. They started to do it both at the same time and finally figured out they could not do that. But if you read the rules, 104, and that's what I'm asking you guys to do, go read it. It says that you have, just because you got a preliminary, and if there's any differences, they may have to come back and resubmit. There was lots of differences between the preliminary and the final. Thank you very much for your time.
Anyone else for public input at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed?
I'd like to remove D and E.
D and E. Anything else? All right, the consent agenda will include approval of the July 14th, 2020 City Commission meeting minutes. Item B, approval of the application submitted by Leroy Smith for a cereal malt beverage license for the 3rd annual celebration to honor the life of Brandon Smith, to be held at the Frisco Event Center from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Saturday, August 1st, 2020. Item C, approval of final payment to Cunningham Sandblasting and Painting Company, Inc. of Joplin, Missouri, in the amount of $10,017 for the water treatment plant solids contact unit blast and recoat project. And item F, approval of the appropriation ordinance for the period ending July 28, 2020, subject to the release of HUD expenditures when funds are received. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second it.
Moved by Patrick, seconded by Chuck. Roll call vote?
Brooks?
Yes.
Fields?
Yes.
McNay?
Yes.
Munsell?
Yes.
O'Brien?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item D from the consent agenda, approval of staff recommendation to award the bid for the 2020 asphalt rejuvenation project to Pro Seal Inc. of El Dorado, Kansas, based on their low bid meeting specifications, .98 per square yard for a total project cost of $75,727.54, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign. Patrick?
Yes, I just had a question. How much, what's the extent of this rejuvenation? What is it going to prolong the life of these streets?
It reduces the oxidation that happens at the top level of the street, so it penetrates. It's a penetrating oil, keeps it from getting brittle, keeps it loose. So we try to do that to keep the flexible pavement on the top. And if you can look, there's even some spots around town. There's even a square out here on Broadway, right around First Street. There's a square in the inside lane that you're like, why is it? That's where they put down their coverage, so that you can tell the difference between the street that's been sprayed as opposed to the little test strip that hasn't. So you can see that it's working.
How much longer do you think we'll get out of the streets because of this treatment?
They go with a 5 to 7 lifespan
5 to 7.
to help. You typically try to apply it within the first 3 years of laying the street.
And my other question is, why do you think we only got one bid on this?
We've typically been getting, there's a lot of different products out there for this. Some of the applicators, we talked to applicators from Kansas City and a couple others, but there are a couple, but we continue just to have, it's based some around the specification, but their price has been competitive, and even this year it went down from last year.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Matt? I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I second it.
Moved by Patrick, seconded by Chuck. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item E, approval of staff recommendation to award the bid for the West Euclid Street Repairs Project to Sprouse Construction of Lamar, Missouri, based on their low bid meeting specifications of $58,794.80, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
I just had two questions. One, why do you think there's such a difference between the estimate and the bid price?
The estimate was, well, we haven't bid out, this is brick paver replacement, so you're on your hands and knees replacing it, and we haven't done that type of work in a long time, so we kind of estimated high as to what that bid price may be.
Okay, that led up to my second question. You talk about brick street patching.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to pick up the bricks, put a new layer under it, and put them back down?
Mm-hmm. Put some concrete under the base and then reset them in sand,
Great.
and try to level them back up and reuse the existing as best we can. And it's not a full street, it's just the worst of the worst in those
Yeah.
areas as we can, so.
Well, I used to live on that street, and I know it's a big issue.
Yeah, and we've been talking about it for a lot of years, and we finally got there,
I
so.
appreciate you taking care
And
of
we
it.
will have one change order coming already, because we had a water main blow up on Claw this year, 2 weeks ago, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Matt? Or entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Larry, seconded by Cheryl. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Moving on to public hearing. The City of Pittsburgh advertised for a public hearing to be held on Tuesday, July 28th, 2020 at 5:30 PM to receive public comment on the establishment of the Creekside East Rural Housing Incentive District, RHID, and the adoption of a plan for the development of housing and public facilities in such proposed district. So I would open the public hearing. Any other individuals, some different concerns or than those already been expressed? This is related to the RID.
Is this question and answer, or is that?
This is input. It's not question and answer per se, but if you'd like to say something, yeah, come on up.
Hi, I'm Carly Zafuda. I'm at 8 Deer Run Lane. I know some of these questions will be brought up and asked. You guys do this all the time. This isn't our expertise. So, we're kind of learning on the fly. An example of one of the things that, part of the process of passing the preliminary and the final on the same night, we're confused by that. I would like that to be answered if possible. The zoning is R1A, is that correct? for this development?
Yeah.
Are there square foot limitations or minimum square foot requirements
Yeah.
for an R1A? And do you know what that is?
Yeah, it's been corrected. It's 1,500.
Okay. So in the plans that you have, they had 1,200 square feet? So is
You are
that,
correct.
has that been
I'm
updated?
smiling, I promise.
Sorry.
Okay, has that been
That's
updated
correct-
in
That has
the-
been corrected. That was incorrect. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So
It
there's-
was never 1,200.
Okay, so there are some situations like that, you know, we don't know if the attention to detail has been taken care of in the whole process. Some of the other concerns we have are sidewalk requirements, if there are any, for an R1A neighborhood.
Yeah,
Does anyone know?
I believe we do have
we
sidewalk
do, but I don't see my
requirements on this.
staff, so I can get a confirmation, but
So
yeah.
Is
I
that
think some
something
of
that
your
needs to be?
questions- I think some of your questions will be answered when we get to the plat
Okay.
portion, because this is
Sure.
really more the.
I was gonna give you a
establishing
list of the things
Okay.
that we're kind of
Okay, yeah,
concerned
that
about,
would
and
be
then maybe
great.
we
That'd be
can
great, yeah.
Yeah, I'm writing
discuss.
them down.
Yeah.
So the watershed environment features that might change with the development, sidewalk requirements for the new development and the current neighborhood that's affected, traffic study for the road infrastructure, current road status. I mean, obviously, some things need maintained already, but what things are going to change and need higher maintenance or replacement. Adjacent property notification, if that was done in this process. The collaboration with the neighborhood, which we know that was lacking, and we did talk to Nate and Bart about that, and going forward, how we can do more collaboration together. Pedestrian safety, huge concern. It's one of the highlights for a neighborhood is the ability to walk and kids can ride bikes, and you add another 1,000 cars coming up and down the road, that's gonna be a problem. The master plan, when the rezoning took place, if there was a short timeline and maybe how that process happened. The vicinity sketch within 1,000 feet surrounding the development area.
What was that?
The vicinity sketch, I think that was one of the requirements in the paperwork. Plans for the road review and upgrade, I already mentioned that. Dimensions for the R1A housing layouts within the lot, if there's any requirements for that. And home design, that's one thing that I know they had some pictures at the last meeting about a month ago, but if there's any more detail, you know, actual pictures and descriptions and covenants.
Do you have a homeowners association in Eastport? Is there a homeowner?
We don't, we have
Okay.
covenants, but not a homeowners
Okay.
association.
Curious.
So, that's it, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carly.
Anyone else like to share during public hearing regarding the RHID? RHID. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. So we're being asked to approve the RID for the Creekside development.
Yeah, and as noted, the typo in the development plan has been corrected. And so tonight is passing the ordinance establishing the district for Phase 1. This is only Phase 1, the 26 homes that were spoke about in the development plan and the development agreement. And so once this district is established, the reimbursable period for infrastructure starts.
Does this RID include the plat?
I
I mean, is it?
They're running parallel right now, but this is not.
My question is, do we have, if there's considerations about the plat, and we're gonna take care of those on the last agenda item today, if there's issues with that, does that affect us approving this RID?
No, this RHID is a boundary. It's not the inner workings of it, it's just a boundary.
The geographical boundary.
Yeah.
So you're comfortable that we can approve the RID district, and even if we don't get the plat approved today, we haven't confounded some process somewhere at the state level? Okay.
Any other questions for Quentin? Okay,
And I do have one more thing, because question of sidewalks. Sidewalks are also a reimbursable expense in here. So just so you know, it's just an incentive build more sidewalks.
Are they required?
Subdivision regulations.
Yeah, I thought that was.
If there's no further questions, I move approval.
Patrick moved to approve the RID for the Creekside East. Is there a second? I'll second it. Any further discussion?
What is the boundaries, Quentin? Since we're talking about sidewalks, would it include Deer Run? Would not, would it?
No,
No.
It would not, okay.
just inside the district.
Just inside the 26 home area,
Yeah.
which is
So-
the phase one area.
Yes, just phase one. So the subsequent phases would go through this whole process again.
Yes.
Phase two would, if they wanted to get,
Each new
Construction.
phase has to have a new district
Right.
established. So this process will have to go through all over again.
so this is just for the 26 homes.
Yeah.
You know, one thing, the roads on Deer Run, hopefully we're going to have this new sales tax for the streets. We have $100,000 in that would be available for that community to share in, to put sidewalks in if they have a concern about their pedestrian safety.
Sure, and we have a sidewalk program that Cameron could speak
Right.
to when he comes up here.
So really, the concerns that it brought forward were so far, and the statements made that the statements aren't related to being against the development per se, just concerns about the process. Doesn't preclude us from approving the RID.
Sure, this is the boundary district,
Okay.
This is only the boundaries of the RID district.
just the boundary,
On
yeah.
phase one or phase two is the whole.
This is just phase one,
The 26 homes.
26, yeah.
All right, there is a motion by Patrick, seconded by Dawn. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same side. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Quentin. Moving into special presentations, Pittsburgh State University update. Dr. Steve Scott, Pittsburgh State University president, will provide details of the campus reopening plans in relation to the current coronavirus pandemic. Welcome, Dr. Scott.
Good evening.
Put this over here,
Oh, goody.
because I know who runs the place. This one right here, this mic. Well, good evening. I know the commission has a lot of work to do, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. You have difficult decisions to make, but by the time I get finished with my presentation, you'll probably be thinking, I'm glad I'm a commissioner and not the president of Pittsburgh State University. Just possibly, you might be thinking that.
They think that every day.
I do want to thank the city. A lot of good work's going on Joplin Street, and Darren and I visited by phone the other day, and I thanked him for the work that's going on there. The street had gotten pretty broken up, and a lot of traffic through there. And Sean mentioned maybe we didn't think we'd be here ever talking about Joplin Street again. For those of you who have a history with the city, you know what that means. But I've had quite a day. I spoke to the county commission this morning over in Girard. I spent an hour and a half or so with Gene Bicknell talking about Pittsburgh, Kansas and what's going on in the world. I spent an hour with the Kansas Board of Regents CEOs in a Zoom call late this afternoon. And to top it all off, I had an hour-long meeting with Sean Nacarado. And then I get to finish my evening with speaking to the Pittsburgh City Commission. So it's been a very, very good day of outreach and connections for the university. So we've had, as you can imagine, and you've had it too, you've had to make decisions around coronavirus and people, I'm kind of tired of people saying, have you ever seen anything like it? Well, of course we haven't. It's a 100-year event. It is unprecedented, and you can't even describe it. It's so extraordinary. But I do want to express my appreciation to the city, the cooperation we've gotten with the city, the work that we do together, whether it's on police or fire or legal issues or the area around the campus. We have a great partnership at so many different levels, so I deeply, deeply appreciate that. This morning I talked to the county commissioners about the county health department and the work that they've done in support of us, and they have been absolutely terrific in support of us. Dr. Stebbins and Dr. Bean have been extraordinary. And not only in what they bring to those positions in terms of the science and their knowledge, but also a practicality and a pragmatic view of how do you live with this virus, and how do you return our economies to where they were before? How do you help this all move forward and have a vibrant community again? So really appreciative of all the different ways that we're working together. And Jay Byer and Sean are leading the Crawford County Recovery Task Force, and I love even the name of that. It's not the task force to hunker down and survive it. It's the task force that's going to move us through it and be in better shape as we exit. So as we face this crisis, as you know, we made a decision in March to send our students home on March 13th. It turns out that was one of the easiest decisions that we made. We thought that was very difficult at the time. We sent them home because spring break was on the horizon, and we were concerned about them going to all kinds of parts of the country where there might be hot spots and then coming back to the community. Really did concern us. And we didn't know as much about the virus then as we do now. So we sent them home. We moved to alternative learning, alternative delivery approaches, and our faculty and staff did a tremendous job of doing that, and just basically on a dime turned and really redirected how they manage their classrooms, their virtual classrooms, and how they support our students. It really points out that our faculty care about the students, first and foremost. Regardless of how they're instructed, they care about the students, and they made it work. We also then made the decision that we had to be online in the summer. And so summer school, really enrollment was pretty good shape, all things considered, but it was all delivered online. Now, I often say some of the decisions we make don't help Blake Benson and the Pittsburgh Area Chamber of Commerce, because if those kids are online, they might be living in Lenexa. And you'll hear my comments that we're very, very aware, you'll hear within my comments, we're very aware that our decisions impact the community and impact the region. Very aware of that. But as we started through this, we said we're going to focus on health and safety of our students, faculty, staff, and the community. We said we're going to focus on clear and consistent messaging and robust communication, even over-communicating. And we're going to focus on helping students pursue their academic programs. How do we keep them moving forward so they can complete those degrees? And those are the things that helped shape everything we've done, and particularly those early decisions to move off campus, to move the summer offerings as well. We had also begun to limit travel. And first it was international travel. Just think about this. This happened in over 5 months. International travel. Then we restricted to the state of Kansas. And we said, well, you can't travel anywhere. And we just continued to revise our policies and our expectations of our employees. We put on a spending restriction policy. We put in place a hiring freeze. Did all the things we felt like we needed to do to move through the end of FY20 and position ourselves for what was sure to come in the coming year. And I know the city's worked hard to build a reserve, to put yourselves in a stronger position financially to deal with these kinds of things. We've never thought it would be to deal with the pandemic, but we knew there was something out there that we had to have a reserve, and I know Darren's done a great job of leading that effort. In June, we said we started reopening a little bit, and we opened our outdoor spaces. We know people enjoy walking at the stadium. They enjoy being at the ball fields. And really, we had several baseball tournaments that happened this summer. And those are good for the community. They don't do anything for us. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's really good for the community. Believe it or not, we canceled all of our summer camps. 5,000 students, elementary, middle, and high school kids, would have been on our campus this summer had we run all those. Team camps for basketball and football and volleyball and baseball, softball, robotics camps, and on and on and on. All those disappeared. They just couldn't be run and couldn't be run safely. That had a tremendous impact, I would say, on the economy of the city. We regret that, but we felt like it was the right thing to do, just in terms of the health and wellness of our faculty, staff, and as well as the community. But it's a painful thing to have to do, and it also has implications for enrollment years later, because you've got middle school kids that might have been here for a camp that never got exposed to Pittsburgh State University, never got exposed to the city of Pittsburgh and the hospitality of this place. That's a problem, and we know that. On July 8th, we announced that we couldn't do the farm show. And we were so excited about doing the farm show. Sean and his team and others throughout this city really worked hard to bring the farm show to town. And I don't know if you know this or not, we don't have an ag program at Pitt State. So it's just a way of pointing out that that really wasn't for us, that was for all of us. That was for the community and the good of the community. And the idea came from one faculty member in the Kansas Technology Center who said, I hear the farm show's moving, we ought to try to keep them in town. And lo and behold, we've got a 6-year contract to make that happen. So didn't happen this year, we gotta have a long-term view. That's something we're gonna be very proud of in the years ahead. So over the past few weeks, we really tried to bring the campus back to life, and I want to talk about that just a second, then I'll kind of pivot to the fall. But before I do, I want to make sure that, I think this is a really, really important point to make. The decisions we've made really do include the community and the best interest of the region. Whether it's a farm show or the camps that we've always done, there's just benefits to all when we do those things. And our University Strategic Initiative Group that Sean runs downtown, Block 22, they've really been active in this virus and our response to the virus. Just think of the amount of dollars that have come, millions of dollars that have come for PPP. That group was instrumental in helping people understand the rules surrounding it. How do you apply? How do you utilize those dollars? What kind of reporting requirements are there? They helped local businesses secure millions of dollars of capital. They delivered hundreds of hours of assistance to over 200 businesses. And locally, I think you know, we were kind of in the middle of, we've got some businesses that can make plexiglass for our offices and our customer service areas. We've got a group in town that could make masks, face shields, and we were in the middle of helping build those connections to make those things happen. We're really proud of that. This is a pretty good example of it right here. And that's what I've got for all of you to have a pretty good look, I think. Can't have too many gorillas around. So those are kinds of things that we do. And those are the things that, there's a huge advantage of being a college town. There's some disadvantages. You get some cars parked in the front yard. You get sofas sometimes on the front porches. And sometimes our students don't act exactly like we want them to. But there's some huge benefits as well. And in a time of crisis, you really see that. You see those benefits. And if there are other things we can do, we want to do it. We want to be responsive. So where are we right now? Well, on July 20th, we decided to, in fact, about 2 weeks before that, we said, we're going to reopen the campus. We're going to unlock the doors. We're going to staff our offices. We're going to try to reduce the density. So there might be supposed to be 6 people in an office, and we pull that down to 3. And they might alternate, and they work from home or they work in the office. But we wanted to breathe life back into that campus, and we wanted to learn what is it like to work in an environment where we wear masks all day, where you have some Zoom meetings and some meetings face-to-face. Sean and I had a meeting earlier today. We sat 12 feet apart, one end of a conference room to the other. It looked kind of crazy, but we're able to navigate it. We're able to make it happen. And we felt like we needed to do that before our students came back. You've heard, and I appreciate the support of the city in this, that we've mandated the use of masks on our campus. That was a difficult decision, but we felt like it was right, and we were a little earlier than what you see now. Yesterday, I saw President Trump wearing a mask. That's a good thing. I've seen Mitch McConnell wearing a mask, Dick Cheney wearing a mask. That needs to not be a political issue. And I think we're moving away from it being a political issue, and that's a good thing. But people like myself, people like you, when we demonstrate, when we role model with masks and say this is important, it makes a difference. So I appreciate your leadership, and I read your comments recently in the paper where you spoke out really strongly in support of masks. We have our student athletes back, and I'll talk a little bit about athletics, but student athletes are back in voluntary workout settings. Some people call that voluntold. I'm not sure what that means, but I think I know. The MIAA conference, I'm the chair of the conference right now. I've got a 2-year stint to do that. I think the sport is so important to our regional colleges. It's important to the connections between our community and universities that I felt, or the community and the university. I just felt like that's something that I wanted to do. I wanted to spend my time with. Well, a few weeks ago, I led a meeting where, very painful decision, but we decided to delay the start of fall sports in the MIAA. You've seen it all over the country. The Ivy League has moved football to spring, they hope. The conference that's next to us in Division II to the east, they announced yesterday they were going to delay all fall sports until the spring. So there are a set of dominoes that are moving, and we're concerned about that. And we tried to put a marker in the ground as the MIAA that said, we're not going to give up yet. We're going to try to get some games in, but we don't know if we will. And we love Saturday afternoon at the Jungle. We love what that does for the community. We love what that does for the energy in this place and the affinity it creates for Pittsburgh State University. But we don't know right now if we can get that off the ground. But just like start of school, we're going to do everything possible to make it happen. So that's where we are. So nobody's going to say about our sports programs that you guys just gave up. You just gave up early and you didn't care. We do care, and we're going to work our way through it if we possibly can. So our goal right now, the current status is to learn to live with the virus. Mask up, clean up, stay apart, and let's make it work. One of the folks that's going to lead our efforts on campus has a background in healthcare policy or health policy. And she said the best approach we can have is to adopt this idea of don't be a close contact. Don't be a close contact. Because if you're always maintaining a distance, and whenever you're somewhat close to someone and you've got a mask on, they've got a mask on, and it's for a very brief period of time, you're not going to be a close contact. So when contact tracing gets started, they won't be talking to you because you weren't a close contact. It's an interesting thought. That means our students, ourselves, we have an opportunity to manage this and control it to some extent. And of course, we're all praying every night for a vaccine. I think that's very, very clear. So looking ahead at the fall semester, classes get underway on August 17th. Our students will be moving in August 14th, 15th, and 16th. We have had a tremendous amount of effort to redesign courses. We will offer 2,200 courses this fall at Pittsburgh State University. I think 500 of those have been moved to online. 1,700 have had other modifications, but so many of those would be still face-to-face. But you think about, we would have classrooms that would hold 40, that we can't put 40 in, that we might put 12 in, and then we might put 15 in, and we might have a group come on Monday, and a group come on Wednesday, a group come on Friday. We call it high flex. You gotta have a nice name for these things. So we've got hybrid, high flex, individual study, fully online, face-to-face. And so what we've tried to do is to communicate to our students what the expectations are. So our students right now who enrolled in the spring can pull up their schedule, and it'll tell them if their courses have been modified from what they enrolled in. Because if you enrolled in 15 hours and you find out when you get to Pittsburgh State they're all online, that's not going to be a very good feeling. So last Wednesday, we released a new schedule that you could pull up your courses and you could see every course and see if it's been modified or not. Now that's a living system because we have faculty who still may make choices about, I'm going to move this online because of a surge or because of a healthcare issue they might have. There might be a very good reason that they would still have some changes coming. So, you think about it, this wouldn't work out well for the city, but if a student went online or they enrolled in 18 courses or 18 hours, and they go out last Wednesday and they look at it, and it shows of those 18 hours, only 3 are face-to-face and 15 are online, and they live in Lenexa, they might decide to stay in Lenexa. We think we're better off to be totally transparent, totally upfront, that this is the expectation. We think that's going to be helpful. And they might say, well, I'll drop that one course and I'll just keep the 15. And, they might, or they just all different ways they can do it. But the important thing is the locus of control will be theirs. They'll make the decision about what they're going to do. We've said the same thing in housing. In housing, initially we said, we're going to mitigate every possible risk we can and make this as safe as an environment as possible, which we are going to do. But at the end of the day, are we going to have infections? We will. How could we not? We've had them in our city, in some of the areas within the city. It's going to happen. So we flipped last week and we said, we wrote every single student who had a contract with us in housing, we said, there's going to be infections in housing. You need to know that. This is how we'll handle it. And if you want to make a different choice, if you want a single room, we can arrange that. If you want to live elsewhere, we're not going to charge you for getting out of your contract. And we've never done that. And if you want to live elsewhere and you live outside of 50 miles and you're a freshman, which normally we'd say you have to live in the dorm, we'd allow that. We'd allow them to move. So this whole idea is these students are making very conscious choices about these are the expectations, this is what Pitt State can deliver. They'll make a decision about coming here. We'll still work like crazy to try to make it safe as possible and do all the mitigation, but we think it's important that they know that. We're also telling them what they need to do to help us make this successful, like wear a mask, social distancing. We're very concerned about bars and restaurants. I'm just telling you, particularly bars. We're very concerned about those environments, and I think that may come to you at some point. as a decision. I think the governor is looking at that. She's very concerned about what's going on in bars with the close contact and there's just not a good environment. I think Texas and Florida are telling us that that's an area of concern. So you can see that we've got besides the curriculum changes, instructional changes, we've got signage and wipes and 8,500 disposable masks and 50,000 on order and all these different things we're storing up, getting to put in place to help us have a successful fall. But we don't know what's going to happen with the virus as we move through this. So we've also just got to be able to pivot and make the adjustments. We'll be tracking a number of things. That's where Dr. Bean and Dr. Stebbins has really helped us. So we'll be tracking a number of metrics as we go along. We don't have a particular trigger or threshold, but we're going to be watching in kind of a holistic way different things that as they occur in terms of the number of infections, the hospitalization rates, the use of ventilators, and all different kinds of things like that. And then we'll be watching that and making decisions as we go in terms of our policies and whether we can stay with our face-to-face instruction or not. So the kind of the big issue that's our next issue, it does seem like every time we decide something, there's like 4 more things to decide. So we decide what we're going to do with masks, and then somebody says, well, what are you going to do about testing? Testing is a really complicated issue. And the federal government has not helped us with testing. I don't care what your politics are, it has not helped us. We do not have robust access. We don't have robust access to testing that's rapid. Some of my colleagues across the state, they tested athletes and they got the results back in 16 days. In 16 days, the 20-year-old is around 1,000 people. You can't contact trace at that point. So we're working on our testing policy. There's a meeting Monday with our medical director, Dr. Kathleen Sandus, our Director of Operations, Rita Girth, and Dr. Stebbins and Dr. Bean, and they're really going to help fine-tune that testing protocol, which will probably focus more on the housing side and the athletic side than anything, just in terms of just trying to test everybody. I don't want to prejudge that or say ahead of time what we're going to do, but that's kind of where we're heading. We're also going to ask our students before they come to self-isolate. So if you live in Bentonville, before you come to Pittsburg State University, we've already sent notes out that says you need to isolate, you need to create a bubble, and for 14 days before you get in a car and drive to Pittsburg State University, you need to steer clear of everybody else, except your family. Have a very, very small bubble, and we think that's going to be helpful as well. So finally, all these comments really are it's about the medical side, it's about the health side, but guess what? There is a financial side of this too. And the financial fallout of this is serious. So we do expect, like every institution in the country, that we'll have loss of enrollment this fall. I think that's going to be pretty clear. What can we do to minimize that? And what can we do to make sure the students who do come are well served so they'll come back in the spring? They have a good experience, they know they're being taken care of. But we also then, besides the tuition revenue, the only other pot of money we really have is the state allocation. And we've been told for this year, it's possible we'll get through without a serious cut. It's possible. But next year, we've been told to plan for a 10% reduction. And that includes a little bit more because there's some money they're taking away this year and then substituting federal dollars on a one-time basis. So we potentially will be down $5 million in revenue from the state next year. If we have that on top of enrollment losses of $3-4 million on a $100 million budget, that's a pretty significant hit when 80% or more of our budget is people. So some people would say, well, higher ed's just fat and sassy and you got a lot of fat out there, and you just need to know over the last 4 or 5 years we've taken $8 million out of our budget. Since the spring of 2016, we have 100 fewer employees than we had. Some people would say that's good for Pittsburgh. I don't know. I'm not sure that is good for Pittsburgh. I think the stronger we are financially, the better off we all are. The stronger the city is, the better off the university is. I mean, it's such a symbiotic relationship that we're going to do what we need to do. I'm pretty old-fashioned. We're not going to spend more money than we have. And we're going to make it work, but we're going to be under a lot of financial pressure going forward. So I just love this statement. You're going to think I'm going to say once a gorilla, always a gorilla. That's fair to say. But our mission statement, I don't know how we came up with this, but it's one of the best things we ever did. Our mission statement is to provide transformational experiences for our students and our community. The Bicknell Center wouldn't exist without that last piece. Neither would the Plaster Center. Neither would the Farm Show. So we are focused on our students, but I'll guarantee you we're going to do what's right for this community. And there's not a lot of institutions in the country, regional or not, that would say in their mission statement, include their community at that level. So I'm really proud of that, proud of the work we've done. But I'm telling you, there's a lot of work to do as we go forward. So I appreciate your support and your help, and I'd be glad to stand for any questions you might have.
I have a couple. The class modification curriculum, is that fall and spring?
Right now it's fall, but I think we're already talking about where spring goes. And just to give you an example, this is more calendar than instruction, but University of Kansas has already moved spring break to the first week of the semester. So in other words, they will actually start instruction a week later, trying to give a really long break to give the people developing vaccines or therapeutics or whatever the longest possible time they can. We've talked about that, but we have not made a decision on that. But we do have about 200 faculty working this week, last week, and next week on preparing to instruct more online than they've ever done before. So I would guess that'll go into the spring as well.
What kind of conversations have been had with the sororities and fraternities? Do you know what they're going to be doing?
What we do know is we will be having conversations with them. I know that.
One way? No.
If we could get their advisors to help us, it would really help. I'm just telling you. And the advisors are all, they're not 21 years old. I'm just saying. So we will be having very clear conversations with them about expectations. We're seeing that all over the country. University leaders are doing that. And those who would come early, like sorority would come for rush, then I think you'll hear us talk about testing related to that because of the housing situation they'd be in. So we will be talking to our clubs and organizations.
I have a question, Dr. Scott, about your hybrid schedule. Is there a number? You said that there will be infection, you know, when you bring a lot of students in from all over the area. Is there a number of, that might go from the hybrid to completely online, back to the way you've been?
Are there students who will do that, or will we do that?
No, I mean, if there's a number of students infected.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Do you have a plan?
Yeah.
Of what that number might be?
Yeah, what we aren't going to do is we're not going to define a specific number, that to answer your question. And the reason is because, you know, it could be the infections grow, but they're extremely well managed. Could be. And I heard a talking head just as I was coming up on the radio talking about that kind of thing. You know, Florida can just be on fire with it, but you could have other areas that aren't, and they're managing it. So that's why we feel like we've got to have this holistic look at what's the capacity of us to contact trace? What's the capacity at the hospitals? What's the capacity for testing? And on and on and on. And so you could have more infections, but all those other indicators look pretty good that you're managing it. We've had some infections we've already dealt with, but they've been dealt with very carefully, really. And so you can't, I don't think we can define a single number. And Dr. Stebbins would agree with this, I know, because he followed me at the podium this morning and said virtually the same thing. You can't depend on a single indicator. What we've got to do is make sure we're looking at those indicators. So not only have we identified them all, and we're still adding some, we have actually assigned people to be reviewing them. And I think you'll be glad to know one of the indicators we'll look at is, what are you doing? What are you expecting of us? Because if you said, hey, let's just shut the whole place down, well, what are we going to do? I mean, we're going to be listening to you. So I think that's the very first indicator we're looking at is what's the guidance from the governor, the state, the county. What do they have in place at any given time? Because that, you don't need to go and look at the other indicators if they're saying you can't operate. You're going to be held up. So I know it's a long answer to that, but it's going to be very, very complicated to just look at one figure. You just can't do it. You got to look at it more broadly. And I'm pretty comfortable with that.
Dr. Scott, how does all of this affect the international students that are here year-round? How are you arranging for this to be taken care of?
There's more than the coronavirus issue for international students. The national view of immigration and having international students study in America is extremely negative. There's just no other way to describe it. A few weeks ago, you may have seen that the Trump administration decided that if an international student was in America and all the courses that student was taking were delivered online, that student would be deported. That is not the best way to get the best talent in the world to come and study in America. And you know what's happening? Where there's a vacuum, there are people glad to take advantage of it. Australia, Canada, the UK, they are winning the day. And we need immigration. We need that talent. We need it in the Polymer Center. We need it in our labs. We need it as instructors. And if you watch CNN, Fox, I don't care what you watch, and you watch the talking heads when they reach out to physicians and the experts in infectious diseases, and you see them on the screen, there's a whole bunch of them that have international backgrounds. How did they end up in America? My guess is they came to study in America. They stayed in America, and they're serving America. That is a huge issue. There are some projections out there that the number of new international students will be 10% of what it would have been without all this. Wow. 10%. Now, we're already down quite a bit, so it's not going to hurt us as much, but it will hurt because they pay non-resident rates. It's good for our culture, it's good for the exchange, but if you think, well, those international kids are all getting a deal out there, they're paying non-resident rates, they're paying the full fare. And they bring great value to the community. This community is awesome in terms of supporting them. So what's happened, Larry, is that, Commissioner Fields, is that the students who are here stayed because they couldn't get back, so they're continuing their programs. So what's going to happen is the pipeline of international students is just going to get restricted, like that, constricted in a year. And that's hard to get that pipeline going again. So that's a real, very serious issue for us.
Any other questions for Dr. Scott?
So anybody want to trade places tomorrow? I do love the work. It's good work, and I work with great people. And I, again, appreciate all of your help and your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate what you do for the community.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to the next agenda item. Under Special Presentations B, Pittsburgh Area Chamber of Commerce video. Blake Benson, President of the Pittsburgh Area Chamber of Commerce, will share a video highlighting steps being taken by area businesses in response to the corona pandemic.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Commission. This is a video produced by Josh Lowe. Josh is our Marketing and Communications Director at the Chamber, does an incredible job of really helping us communicate with the business community and communicate to the community about our businesses. Josh produced this video in mid-May. If you'll recall, that was about the time when a lot of our businesses were allowed to reopen their doors. Restaurants were able to reopen their dining rooms. Retail establishments were able to go beyond the online presence and open up their storefronts because we knew that there would be some concerns from some in our community about the safety of patronizing those businesses. And we knew, because we had worked with those businesses and knew of their plans to safeguard not only themselves and their employees, but their customers as well. So I think Josh did a great job of really capturing that, the steps that are being taken, and also how important that walk-in traffic is to our businesses. So if the folks in the back are ready, I'll go ahead and play this. If I need to do anything else, just tell me. Whoops, not that. Okay.
I want everyone who enters my door to feel like, you know, I, as a business owner, am taking every precaution to keep our community safe. Our community, I mean, without this community, I could not be here.
We've modeled our business as being a brick and mortar store. That's what's most important to us and my wife is having the in-store experience as opposed to online. Part of that is creating a safe and inviting environment for people to come in and feel comfortable to shop in.
We're wearing our masks, so you know, back in the kitchen in front of house, and when we go outside.
Just like we would normally, is disposable gloves, one on, one off, you know, soap dispensers. We had our disinfectants everywhere. We were extra careful about it.
We're probably not going to allow any walk-ins for a while just because that's extra foot traffic. So you'll probably need to call the salon if you want to get in, but it might be a couple-week wait to get any new appointments in.
We also have hand sanitizer at the front of the door. As soon as you come in, you can use that. And we also have it at the back of the store for checkout as well, so you can use that before you check out at the counter.
We have our outdoor seating, so when it's nice out, we'll have those out there. So it's just 2-seaters, but you know, if you want to actually have a day lunch date with someone, you can sit out there.
In between everybody trying stuff on, we spray down our dressing rooms. We take the clothes, we either steam them, or we have a antibacterial fabric spray that we use.
You know, we loved having people. That was our entire being, was, you know, seeing people, doing what we can for them, and it was so hard to do, you know, extra things for people. That was our business, is, you know, going the extra mile. It was hard to do for carryout.
It makes us feel better to make sure that we're doing every single thing we possibly can to, you know, flatten that curve and stop it.
Obviously, we want to do our part to limit the spread of this virus, and I want our customers to feel comfortable coming in here. I want to respect their safety and ours.
The community support was outstanding. People really rallied to help local businesses, especially. People are still coming back in, and, you know, the first thing they say is, "Thank God you're open."
So this was very well received, obviously, on our social media. Josh tells me that it immediately had about 8,500 views. A lot of people were sharing it. We appreciated that. I think, first of all, I want to commend the businesses for the steps that they are taking to protect their customers. And for every one of these stories, there are 50 others out there just like them, businesses that are doing the same thing. But I know those businesses would also want me to thank the community. Darren was just telling us a little bit earlier today, sales tax collections. I think everybody was concerned that sales tax collections could have taken a 20-30% dip during the coronavirus pandemic. I believe the April numbers were flat, and the May numbers are actually up. Sales tax collections were up. And I think a big reason for that is because many in our community made a conscious effort to support local businesses, to maybe eat out once a week more than you normally do, or patronize local businesses, because our community is great about realizing how important they are to our business's success. So we felt like this would be a good time to show this video again, in case there is anybody maybe watching from home that has some of those same concerns that we were naturally concerned that they may have in mid-May. These precautions still are ongoing. Our county health officers have done an incredible job of really giving guidance to the business community on how they can be safe as they reopen. So I would encourage anybody in our community to feel comfortable supporting our local businesses. So with that, be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for the opportunity to show this.
Thank you, Blake.
Any questions for Blake? Nope. Thank you, and thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
All right.
Good job, Blake.
Moving on to item C, the 2021 budget. Consider the 2021 budget for adoption. A public hearing will be scheduled for August 11th as prescribed by law, to be held in the City Commission Room located in the Law Enforcement Center at 201 North Pine at 5:30 p.m. for the purposes of hearing and answering questions relating to the 2021 budget. We've had several opportunities to hear what the budget looks like.
Mayor and Commissioners, last meeting you were presented with the 2021 submitted budget from Darren and I. The budget contains no mill rate increase for taxes. It's basically about the same budget as this year is, because there's just so many unknowns out there with the COVID environment we're operating under right now. So what we're asking is, if you have any questions on this budget tonight, we'll be presenting the final budget next meeting on August 11th, and you will have to formally adopt it at that time. After tonight's meeting, I will have to publish a public hearing notice in the paper for that August 11th meeting, and we'll have a public hearing on the August 11th as well. You got anything to add, Darren?
So you heard the news on the sales tax, which is great news. The problem is there's so much of the year left that adjusting this budget based on what happened in April and May would be irresponsible. And with Dr. Scott's message that if anybody can tell me what the impact is going to be on the economy with some unknown fewer number of students, then I think we probably need to stick with the budget we have before you. Like Jamie said, we've worked on it with you since February, I believe. It's a solid document. The service level for the community is the same. It's consistent. It's has an emphasis on the IP 2030 initiatives, and maybe more importantly, it's back to the service level for all the police and firemen and that have been, and women that have been deprived the opportunity to hire on with us because we've had a hiring freeze for 4 or 5 months. That's going to be lifted effective immediately, and we're going to get back to hopefully some sense of normalcy with the hopes that if something does happen for the rest of this year, what we've already done financially will get us through without touching reserves. But we don't see any need to change the existing budget that you've already considered, just for the fact that there's just so much time left, anything could happen.
I'd like to address some concerns I've had, numerous calls from employees about something about a month or so ago that we talked about and might have been a consideration of reducing all employees' salary by 5%. I just want to say that we have a bunch of hardworking employees. That 5% reduction comes at a time when there is uncertainty out there. But the 5% is gained by the employees by when we budget a raise, and we budgeted 2% every other year. So that 5% that we talked about, hopefully, and I'm sure that's not going to happen, I don't see it here, but I just want to let the employees know that I'm not in favor of that, haven't been in favor of that, because 5% reduction, a 2% every other year took them employees 4 years to get 5%. And if we took that away from them, going back to the budget of 2% every other year, that would cost 4 or 5 years for them to get back where they're at. So, let me finish. I don't support that. And we don't know what the rest of the year is going to be. Hopefully we don't have to look at that. But I would support Darren's furlough policy that he put in place. And I think that if need be, and hopefully you don't, you'd have to look at what jobs are essential and what jobs are non-essential. And from the top down, we look at that furlough policy, and hopefully neither one of them have to be done. So I just want the employees to know that I'm not in favor of that. I won't be in favor of it, but we do have a furlough policy. If we have to go that route, I would support that from the top down.
I think, the percentage of salary wage cut across the board and layoffs were almost like doomsday options. We never talked about it seriously in terms, it was just on the table in case we got to that point. We were incredibly lucky, and it's more than luck. It's a good fiscal management and growth in our community that has gotten us through April and May. So I appreciate what you're saying, Chuck, but I want the message to be that we never considered that formally. So I don't want the message to get out there.
Exactly.
Because I think that's what the message that got out. Oh yeah, we're cutting pay. Well, we never were going to. So.
I understand that, but you can understand their fears and by hearing that.
Well, I hope that you told them that wasn't what was going to happen, that we weren't seriously talking about that it was just one of those things that was on the agenda that you have to talk about for the worst case scenario. And I hope you told them that's what it was.
Well, I told them I wouldn't support it. Yes, you're right. We never.
Well, I don't think any of us would support it unless something horrible happened.
Right. And having said that, I move to my next item I'd like to discuss, and that's possible electric municipalization. That we set money aside in budget years to a total of $1 million that comes from reserves in our general fund, utility fund, revolving loan fund. In November this year, I think we spent, we're told we spent 140-some thousand. And we haven't spent any since November. Deputy City Manager says we stopped meeting with advisors and spending this money because it was the holiday season. Well, what I think happened when all this started, we had a gentleman from Winter Park, Florida, and he explained the process. He said, the city of Wichita started what we did. They spent $100,000 on the study. And then the political climate changed. And I think that's what happened in November. We had an election in November. I've talked to more people than ever, personally, in person, on the phone call. And I think the election reflects that the majority of the citizens are not in favor of us pursuing the municipality of electricity. And, you know, I am in favor of a wastewater utility plant that we're going to be talking about. That's the $40 million cost. That's something that's we need to do for economic development. Our old plant needs to be replaced. So that's going to be something that the citizen's going to have to pay for over a number of years. And I can support that. Our street sales tax, that's something else I'm very much in support of. That's something we need. But like I said, after talking to numerous individuals and results of the election showed the majority of the citizens of Pittsburgh are not in favor of that. So having said that, I'd like to make a motion that we no longer pursue the electric municipalization for the city of Pittsburgh.
I guess there's a motion on the table. I don't know if we want to hear from Jay. I think I heard from the deputy city manager something different than you heard in terms of not doing anything over the holidays. I heard that there was a recognition in terms of the support of the elected commission. So, you know.
Well, I guess we heard two different things, because I sure didn't hear that, but I did make a motion.
And we've talked about that before, Chuck.
There is a motion on the floor.
Is there a second to Chuck's motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, open for discussion. There is no current activity toward that, so what is the point of your motion? Just to clarify to the community that it's no longer something that this commission is looking at?
Yeah, that's something the citizens overwhelmingly decided they didn't want to pursue. And I think as commissioners, we listen to what the citizens of Pittsburgh want, so that's why I made the motion to no longer pursue this. Like I said, we've got costs that we're looking at with the wastewater treatment plant of $40 million. I don't know how you pay for that, and possibly $150 million on a electric grid, whatever we might have to pay.
I think we've heard several times that we are no longer looking at it. I mean, we've heard.
Well, it's there, it's just waiting. We have that money set aside.
We do not have that money set aside. We've talked about this.
It's not, it's there that we could use if things turn around, and if the next election we have a majority of commissioners that want to pursue it, then we pursue it. But what I'm saying is the majority of the citizens elected people, and they appreciate that they don't want to pursue this. And I'm just bringing this up for what the citizens of Pittsburgh want.
But I think we need to be very clear. There is no bucket of money set aside to pursue the electric municipality, especially in these times. I mean, the staff had identified potential revenue, but that was never, there's no bucket sitting there. So I want to make sure that that's very clear, because
I understand that, but if everything that happened now didn't happen, we would still be spending the money that we set aside. I fully believe that at this point.
So you believe that even after the election, even though Jay told us that the election indicated to leadership that there was not the will to do it?
I didn't hear Jay say that. I heard Jay say that because of the holiday season, we haven't pursued this any further. That's
Well, I heard Jay say the very thing that the mayor's saying. I never heard him say it was squelched because of the holiday season.
Okay.
You know, we don't shut down our business for the holiday season.
I understand that.
Something this important
Right.
goes on, it may subside during the holiday season, but it doesn't go away because of the holiday season.
Okay, I understand.
It goes away for another issue. And you talk about not being able to finance the electric company and the wastewater treatment plant. The electric company is to make money.
So is the wastewater treatment.
It wasn't a negative cash flow.
So is the wastewater treatment plant. So, there's a motion and a second. If any more discussion?
Can I speak on the motion before you guys vote, just so
Yes.
we know where we're at? So yeah, first of all, the commission approves us spending money. So to make a motion for us to not spend money are you telling me to not read articles on electricity? Because we're going to go ahead and, continue to provide service to the community on everything and a whole variety of things, but we have no plans to spend any money, nor can we spend any money that doesn't come before you. So the idea that there's $1 million somewhere earmarked, I mean, I want to clarify, no money gets spent in chunks like that without the commission's direction. And it was made pretty clear from the staff that was running the electricity initiative that as of November, we would not be doing it anymore. So I just want to be clear, if you're going to start making motions to tell us not to do things, I think it's going to be confusing, but I want to make sure you understand, we're very clear that we're in sync with you, that we are not spending any tax dollars on studying electricity outside of our normal due process of reading the newspaper and paying attention to what's going on and bringing you things as you need to look at them. Hopefully that clarifies that.
Tammy, exactly what was Chuck's motion?
You've seen this, Don. It's in the.
I'm asking what your motion is.
Well, the motion was that we no longer pursue the thought of municipalization of electricity. I think that's what the citizens want, and that's what my motion is.
Okay, I have a question. So we vote to do that. A month later, all we got to do is vote to redo it and say, now we want to go ahead and go after something. So I mean, nothing would prevent us from doing that.
Right, but you'd have to have an election and get the majority.
No, we wouldn't have to have an election if we voted to go ahead and start interviewing and not spending any money. But we could vote to go ahead and start again if somebody chose to do that.
Sure.
If things change. So I don't know what good it would do to say we're not going to spend any money if there is no money to be spent and we're not spending any money.
And my concern is I'm going to do something and you're going to be like, oh, we told you not to do that. And I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. I mean, do you want me to not read any articles?
You just said we can't think about it.
Can't think about it.
Larry says we can't spend money on it. That's two different things.
I don't
That's
know.
two big different.
What's your point?
Hey, Commissioner Mansell, what if you made a motion that directed the staff to not spend any more money with the consultant team that we had put together to study municipalization? Is that fair? Because
Yeah, I like that.
I think that gets to your point, and I think that's consistent with what we're already doing, and if that can get us off of the subject.
So Chuck, are you open to an amendment or a revision of your
Yes,
motion?
exactly how John put it.
Okay.
Because I think that's what the citizens want.
Yeah, we
And I
understand.
might not have worded it
That's fine.
precisely,
Right.
but I
And
think it's
Cheryl, are you
time.
comfortable seconding that motion? Sure. Okay. So basically, the motion on the table is that no monies will be spent with any of the consultants related to looking at the electric municipality without commission approval. Right? Is that what everybody heard?
That's the,
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1.
What, who, 41?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear the one. Okay, gotcha.
Clarify that this budget doesn't contain any expenditures
Right.
for the electric
We know
study.
that, Jamie.
Okay.
What was that, Jamie?
It doesn't contain any more expenditures for the electric study in this budget.
I know that.
did we set the hearing?
Yes.
If we're-
Do we have to
11.
take action to set the hearing? Is that what the action is? Do we have to
Yes,
take action?
yes, you
Okay.
need to announce that we will have a public hearing.
But do we make a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay.
On
So I would-
August 11th.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing for the 2021 budget on August 11th at 5:30 PM in the Law Enforcement Center.
So move.
Moved by Patrick, seconded by Larry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Good job, Jamie.
Moving on to item D, public meeting, wastewater treatment plant improvement project. The city is given notice of a public meeting to be held on Tuesday, July 28th, 2020 at 5:30 PM in the City Commission Room in the Law Enforcement Center, 201 North Pine, to present and discuss alternatives for wastewater treatment plant and collection system improvements to be funded under the low-interest state revolving loan fund program through the Kansas Department of Health and Environment for an anticipated amount of, that's a big number, 40 million.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. So as part of our pursuing KDHE loans for this project, we are to give notice of a public meeting to initially set forth what those expenditures are, moving forward with the public hearing on August 11th. So we're setting forth what this number is and what the loan would be for that, and following documents as part of the packet for the KDHE loan program before. You want to expand upon that?
Yeah, the 40 million includes basically the wastewater treatment plant as well as pump station, force mains, and that's where we got the 40 million from directly out of PER.
And doesn't that include the design?
Yes, that's the design, construction inspection, as well as the actual construction itself.
So the action we need to take tonight is that we will schedule a public hearing related to this loan amount on August 11th.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions?
I don't have a question, but I did have a call and a conversation with Dave Fernelli, the mayor of Frontenac. He seems to, the city has a lot of questions. I don't know if they've been answered adequately. So they're acting like they need more information. There was an MOU. Their attorney called you, Henry, on and was asking about the MOU. Is that something you wrote? I know they have questions about it.
The MOU, so as part of Pete's design contract that we've approved, we never set forth the timetable for the city of Frontenac. We've been discussing with him over a year and a half. We never set forth a timetable for them to take action to tell us if they would like to participate or not participate. I know Mr. Fernelli, two other commissioners, KDHE, members of Sugar Creek, myself and Chris met in Frontenac back in February to kind of outline what was going on within the PER and their options to more explore that discussion. Since then, when we entered the contract with Pete for the design, we asked for an MOU, not a contract, just tell us that you would like to participate so that we know how to incorporate your needs and into our design and help us move forward. And we set that, and it was 60 days, which is roughly the end of August, 23rd or so, to do that.
Well, that's the thing they did.
And we have, and from there, Darren has had correspondence, along with their city administrator, to talk about, we've continued to open dialogue to any questions that they've come forth with, we've responded to through their city administrator.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. You said we've talked to them for a year and a half, but their city administrator and some of the, I don't know, council.
But from the previous city administration to the current,
right.
Mr. Fornelli as the mayor, Mr. Zafuda as the city administrator, their current city clerk, two others, Tom and Lynn, Grant, were in that meeting with the director of KDHE and Shelley Shores Miller. I'm not sure officially what her title is, but two representatives from KDHE, one being the director of KDHE, and members of Sugar Creek, including Adam Lusker, were in that meeting to discuss about their different options and potential directions to go for. KDHE can't say you can't do this or you can't do that. They just provide their best recommendation.
Well, like I said, they called me. I don't know what the discussions were. It's just, they didn't want to be looked on like they're not trying to maybe partner with us on this, but maybe there needs a more.
Again, publicly, I would encourage their commissioners to come take a tour of our existing mechanical treatment plant to kind of get a better understanding. And I'm sure Darren's on board as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're going down a path we don't need to go down. We are engaged right now with their city manager. Henry's talked to their city attorney. They are in the process of, over a course of several meetings, updating their city commission. They're trying to get into enough information to make a good decision about whether or not they want to participate in this. And it's been going on for at least a year and a half. And
So-
it's continuing, and they know that they are under the same timeline we are, that we're going to eventually design and build a plant. And we hopefully give them enough time and enough information to make a decision about what role they want to have in that. But it's active. I've talked to him last week. Henry's talked to their attorney, and anything else we're going to say is, just, we understand, Commissioner.
Well, like I said, I'm not heading down no path, I'm just telling you what the conversation was. And-
Sounds like the commissioners need to get with their city manager, so.
And they
What's that,
probably
Donna?
have.
Sounds like maybe the commissioners need to get with their city manager to get clarification, so.
Well, I think we need to appreciate that everybody has schedules, everybody's dealing with the same pandemic we're dealing with, and everybody has drivers in their community, and Frontenac is at the table with us, working hand in hand, and I think it's great that their commissioners call our commissioners, and all Matt's saying is we will do whatever we can to give them the best information for them to make a good decision.
Thank you, that's all they're asking.
All right, so the action needing to be taken regarding item D is to set a public hearing on the wastewater treatment plant improvements for August 11th. I guess 5:30, the same time as 5:35 after the other public hearing.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Patrick, seconded by Larry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
It wasn't Larry, it was.
I'm sorry.
I'm the other
It was-
Larry.
it was
Oh, that Larry?
I said Larry. Sorry. I want to get him in the minutes. All right, moving on to considering the following. A, plat Creekside East. Staff will provide a verbal recommendation from the Planning Commission Board of Zoning Appeals to approve or disapprove the preliminary and final plat submitted by Bart Arnett on behalf of Turnkey Developers LLC under the provisions of Article 2 of the Pittsburgh subdivision regulations to allow the preliminary and final plat of the property located immediately west of Free King Highway, north of the water treatment plant, and south of Remington Square, between East Quincy Street and East Fourth Street. Cameron?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. The Planning Commission had its meeting last night. It voted 6-0 to recommend the preliminary and final plats that were presented. I would like to bring up Nate Stahl, Bart Arnett, and Josh, who's with Anderson Engineering, and let them answer some of the questions that have been brought up.
Darren, do you want to
Whoa.
lead the, you wrote the questions down. Would you want to lead the discussion?
I think it'd be best, I think the developers need to talk to their project a little bit. And then, yes, I've got anything they don't cover. I think we definitely want to leave tonight's meeting undoing whatever feeling was done, if possible, last night, and make sure that we've answered every question and given the proper scope of what the project is, what your intention is, and what's relevant to phase one, and what just in general did not work well will be something the staff's going to address before this meeting's over as well. So, yeah, we'll try to get it all knocked out. I think we took pretty good notes.
Okay.
Go ahead, guys.
All right.
Nate Stahl, Turnkey LLC.
Bart Arnett, Turnkey LLC.
And then Joshua Odehout, I'm a civil engineer with Anderson Engineering.
First of all, I'd like to say thanks for listening to us tonight. Second of all, I'd like to just comment on my friends at Deer Creek there. Bart and I appreciate all of their comments, and we take them very seriously. So when addressing the commissioners tonight, I would hope I can cover some of those questions for them. So five and a half months ago, we started this.
process. The first thing we did, because we thought it was so important, is we went out and interviewed 2 top-notch engineering firms. We selected Anderson Engineering because this is what they do. They work with the developers. They design stormwater runoff. They do all of the infrastructure, the roads, and that's what they specialize in. So for the last 4 months, not only have we teamed them up with the city's engineering team and then met weekly, if not bi-weekly, over Zoom meetings and everything we had to do to make our deadline for the preliminary and the final plat. You know, some of the reasoning that we did that is because of timing, and it comes down to our business plan. With the weather, the last 2 years, we anticipate, rain coming back in December. So if we could get started September 1st, that gives us enough slabs on the ground that we can continue through the winter and make our business plans successful. So that was the urgency driving the project. Also, the RID incentive, which is now approved, our clock is ticking. So for every house that we can sell from the point about an hour earlier, starts paying us back through the infrastructure. And the infrastructure is privately funded by turnkey development, and we only succeed if we build the houses and then get paid back over the next 15 to 17 years. So that's really the urgency. I feel like working with the city, our design team. I personally sat down with Dexter. I checked off every bullet point on our checks list the first time. After the final plat came out, Bart and I both sat down with him. We took a highlighter. We looked at every single thing on that checklist, highlighted it 100% completely. There was no willy-nilly in how we came to this. It was all well thought out, well planned out with our engineers. The first thing that they actually did a stormwater runoff survey. So they know where the water was going, what it was going to affect, if it was going to affect anybody. And I think I could even say that it probably made everything better in that area.
Agreed.
The current real estate market is super strong. We met with every realtor in town, met with realtors in Joplin, went to Dodge City. There's not one place that's not selling houses right now. So the longer we wait, you know how that market can go. So we really want to hit the ground running. The RID's approved. We appreciate the approval for the road coming in. That was a big deal. So I'll open it up to questions or let Bart talk a little bit if he has anything to say.
I think you covered it all.
Let me ask, you talk about the preliminary and the final plat.
Yes.
Do those usually go together? Are they usually in the same, presented at the same meetings?
The research that I've done, the last 2 have went that way, yes. Yes, sir.
Cameron?
So, to piggyback on Patrick, this has come up for the last 2 RIDs. So if we have something in our ordinance that says that we don't do that and we're doing it, then maybe we need to revise our...
It's the commission's prerogative to go ahead and see both of those at the same time. What we've got out there is just your standard procedures. It's not uncommon for these to be put in all at one time. Look back at several of the different developments that have been done in the past, and there's quite a number of them that I look at that only references a single plat being brought to commission or to the planning commission for that matter. So it's been standard practice to do that. So as we came in, as we took a look at the regulations there and started trying to follow that more in kind. So you're seeing more thorough follow through than what has been done in the past. Not to say that we're 100% because we are asking you for doing something again that's not strictly by those regulations, but it is up to the commission if they would like to allow that.
What does our ordinance read? That the preliminary plat has to be approved, and then was it 10 days later you would come back for the final plat?
Yes, correct.
In the preliminary plat, some of the questions that was raised last night, would they been addressed and answered if we would have done it the way your ordinance reads?
Yeah. I believe the things that would have been addressed were things that would not have changed the scope or the intent or the layout at all of the subdivision. You might have cleaned up, and rather than having proposed street names, you'd have actual street names. Items like that for us, when they come in for the final, I don't have a problem going, okay, you had it as proposed in your preliminary, give us the name on the final, which they've done that on what they've submitted. So there are minor things like that that might have been cleaned up, but would not have changed the layout, would not have changed the lot lines, would not have changed the road alignments. Any of that would have been changed if they had strung out that time further.
But it's on we have an ordinance that says it goes that way. And we, like Don said, the last couple times we haven't followed our own ordinance, which ordinances are basically the laws set by the commission.
Is it an ordinance or is it a procedure? I think that's.
That ordinance sets out those procedures in
Okay.
the guidebook. So, and again, it's up to the commission, like was said before, you can, vote something in one meeting and turn around and vote against it or vote to remove it the next. I think that's essentially what they're asking you to do here is, for their project and their timeline, they're asking for you to go ahead and approve both at the same time.
Well, for me, I think you follow the ordinance. We run into this problem again. There was a lot of questions that was asked, and I was at the meeting, and I have to agree with the residents. Their questions weren't addressed, weren't answered, some of them, but it was still pushed through. It made our planning and zoning, to me, I didn't understand it, why their question wasn't asked. It was like, they brought a lot of good points up. And I have to say, everyone that came up, and I'm sure everyone on this commission is for Bart and Nate with this development. They're not against that. There are a lot of questions that they had asked, and it seemed like the planning and zoning board didn't address their questions, and I don't think that's what we want to happen when citizens have questions. Somebody says, not in my backyard. It's not in my backyard. That's an easy excuse to use, but people do have questions. And if we don't answer their questions, and we don't follow an ordinance that we have on the books that says we're going to wind up in the exact same place we are now. I don't know, there was one thing, a couple of things. You said something on the stormwater, and that's a big thing to me. If you remember, Silverback was a big stormwater issue. I heard one side's going to go to the east is going to go to a creek. The other side on the west, their stormwater is going to go into a field, and maybe make it.
I was going to say, let's just let them answer the question. What's the plan for the stormwater?
Again, my name is Josh Roda, and I'm a civil engineer with Anderson Engineer. We did the design on the stormwater for this system. So it's split up. If you look at the preliminary plat, I think it's tract A out by Kings Free Highway. All of phase one, those 20 lots that we're asking for approval with the final plat, it's all draining to that basin. And then as well as we've accounted for some of the future phases, phase two, that will also eventually be getting there. So it'll go into that basin, slowly fill up, and then we ran an analysis to figure out what was going there pre this development, what it's out there doing right now, and then it'll release at or less those rates. And I believe I don't think it's less than those rates. The other one, with phase one, it's 6 lots down on the southwest side of the subdivision. It is right now not planned on going into a detention. It's going into an existing ditch that's there on the south side. Peyton's Hamlet, which is another subdivision, I think it's 4 lots right there. It's discharging to the same location there. So with ditches, you have the grass-to-grass contact with the water to get the pollutants out, and then it's running downhill to that stream and floodplain area where in our original meetings, I know there's potential plans for lakes and other development to capture that at a later time. But given the size when compared to Peyton's Hamlet, that was right there, it was, and talking with city staff, it was determined just to go ahead at this point and release into that ditch, get some of that grass to water contact, and then let it go down to the stream.
And that would be adequate to capture the stormwater runoff with those two developments? Peyton and Hamlet?
So the ditch is big enough to handle the stormwater for the two developments, but it's not. We're not providing detention for those 6 lots. To provide detention, it'd be a minuscule basin at that time. I know with the future phases, I heard there were some questions there, and the water that's not currently going into the Phase 1 Tract A basin will be going into a new basin when we present Phase 2. They're just north of Peyton's Hamlet, where there's kind of an already existing pond that we plan on expanding and providing detention for the future phases.
I know last night there was a couple, and I see them here, that are having issues with stormwater runoff.
Okay.
So I don't know if this is something they just said that will answer your questions, or do you have questions about it?
I have a question. That runoff runs right next to my property, okay? So you're saying that I'm not gonna get pooling down at the end of my property?
Where?
On that ditch. So before we get into back and forth here, because that's not productive, we have found in these meetings. So our choices tonight are to move to accept the recommendation from the board, which would approve the preliminary and the final. Another option would be to give either city staff and/or turnkey the opportunity to clarify some of the concerns brought forward. Is that, and then approve it at the next meeting? Is that?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to approach this is Dr. Sigley, and he has questions. I've got 10 questions here. Most of them are around certain subjects. So one of them is stormwater, obviously. I think we ought to take the opportunity to try to address the questions we heard tonight. Obviously, where we may get is we probably need to hear from the development team, since they're the ones driving the schedule. The city was trying to accommodate their construction schedule, which is why the preliminary plat and the final plat were put together. So I think it'd be fair to hear from you guys, quite honestly, about your time schedule, because we've got to address some serious, concerns that I think a lot of them aren't even Phase 1 concerns. And what we're trying to do is get you guys moving with Phase 1 and get you building and deal with their questions, because they've lived there for a long time, and I think they plan on living there for a long time. What's going to happen in Phase 2 and 3, and what's going to happen with the road, and what's going to happen with sidewalks? So I think somehow we need to dig this thing up into 2 pots, see if there's any way to get off of Phase 1 this evening, and then and maybe there's not, because maybe doctors. I mean, if we just have everybody from the audience come up, we're going to turn into what happened last night, which I think last night is probably where it broke down, because it sounds like the chair wasn't ready for the numerous conversations that exploded. But we've got to find a way through it tonight, answer as much as we can, see if we can get it to Phase 1. But we've got to provide some real answers about, I know the staff's pretty comfortable with the long-range plan of 2 and 3, and that if there's a road, we'll come to you and ask you to build it or improve it or whatever it's going to need. But as Dr. Savuda said, well, that's great, but that doesn't do much for me, because they may not be doing Phase 2 for a couple of years, and everybody up here may change, and he's not going to have a lick of standing with whoever's up here. So we do need to try to get, I think, through Phase 1 right now. Let's try to get some of these questions addressed, and then hopefully the 2 commissioners were there can see if we're addressing them. And if we have to take a couple of people, like Dr. Sigley clarifying, hey, does the gentleman from Anderson's Consulting answering your question? I think maybe we need to go there tonight, just for the sake of, unless you guys are telling me you got 60 more days, and then we can just say.
Well, it's really only 10.
Yeah, well, that's my point, is you need to tell us, you're driving this. I mean, do you have time to go back and? what do you need from us?
I mean, honestly, is 10 days going to do anything with future planning?
No, but it may give us a chance to educate some
No,
folks
no,
that we
I
never,
understand.
quite frankly, had any meetings with and don't know what phase
Right.
2 and 3 are. But we know phase 1's not gonna impact them, but that doesn't mean they don't have concerns over 2 and 3.
Sure.
So I just, oh, go ahead.
Didn't something come up last night about September 1st? It sticks in my mind. What's
Yeah,
September?
that was our projected start date.
Start date. So
Yeah.
this is, so there would be time maybe to clarify some of this between now or maybe tonight.
But if tonight we can get through phase 1 approved, we can go back and make sure that we have the future discussions soon about what 2 and 3 look like, what sidewalks look like, what safety looks like. But if we can get through the plat, the phase 1 final plat today, that's what I think we should have as our goal. And if we can't, we can't. But we need to look at the questions in those two barrels.
I guess my thoughts are if the phase 1 plat is tabled, it really doesn't change phase 1. So I don't see, I mean, we might be able to fix a few clerical errors or whatever, but none of that has any impact. The impact is not getting started, having the phase 1 filed and being able to start and get housing going. That, you know, the housing's what generates the RID, and that's the whole incentive. And without that, it's very, very difficult to do.
Well, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 questions that came before us.
Right, that's about what I've got.
And I think unless you're going to have a meeting with these concerned residents, we need to stop this conversation and go through these things one by one.
Just start, stormwater was the first one.
Stormwater, you
Okay,
took.
Darren, we'll let you run the show.
Before
questions?
before we start that, I see Mr. Marietta had a question. He had his hand up. Could he?
I think the first question
This isn't
is,
question
are
and
you
answer
going to vote to not
I
follow your
think we
regulations?
owe it to them to have them ask their question, Patrick.
I think the commission has to vote first. Are you not going to follow your regulations that you have to have a preliminary and then give them 10 days to find the final? Because if you're going to do this, you're doing it without doing that again. So I think the first thing you have to do as a commission is vote. We're not going to follow our rules. We're going to go ahead and change them here again tonight.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and get the questions answered.
All right, so stormwater, flow to the west. Flow to the west, you're saying, is 4 homes going into the creek?
Correct. So right now, the flow to the west is piggybacking what Peyton Hamlet is doing. There's an existing ditch there along the south side of the property that those 6 homes will be flowing into and being delivered to.
Does somebody own that ditch or?
Right now, I believe the ditch is under property of Turnkey Developer, correct?
So that's your ditch?
That ditch on the south side, because we're putting it in an easement. Yeah. Okay.
And it's adequate to take this stormwater?
Correct.
It's adequate?
Yeah, it's, I think right now it's 20 foot, about 20 feet wide in areas and then several feet deep.
So
And it's taken a couple homes.
that would take the stormwater in phase 1.
Correct. Down to the west.
And I know we don't need to get our head of ourselves in phase 2.
Yeah.
But something would maybe possibly need to be done in phase 2 with that ditch.
Okay, next question.
I guess I was finished with that question, but go
Good.
ahead.
Correct.
Thank you, Don, for letting them answer my question.
We had a question about traffic study.
Yeah, so somebody walk us through why or why not we would need a traffic study.
Okay. I can
What's the
start if you want to fill
criteria
in.
for when we would do a traffic study?
So like I said, in my experience with other local communities, for 126 homes, right now we're proposing 2 egresses. So you're looking at roughly 50 or 60 per each egress. When we looked at this with the master development to the east, I actually added more egress to the north, which would have been a 3rd egress. So you're down kind of 30 to 40 each entrance. So as far as a traffic study, can it be warranted? I'm sure it can. But in my experience, I've seen this size development at this stage, we're only adding the 20 homes and the 6 homes. It's not going to be a big impact in the infrastructure that's.
When is the Deer Creek Lane going to connect up to this development? What phase is that?
So it will connect right away with those 6 homes.
So those 6 homes are going to provide through traffic?
Correct.
Not through traffic. No,
Or
it'll be dead.
Dead end.
So it will be a dead end. So is that, I think the concern is that people are going to be driving, from what I have in my notes, from the high school off of is it not connecting or it is connecting?
No, it'd just be a dead end for those 6 homes on that cul-de-sac.
And what about phase 2?
Phase 2, it would connect.
So there's
at
going
that
to come a
point.
time where we're going to need to do a traffic study. And what you're
Correct.
saying tonight is for phase 1,
The 20
you're
homes and 6
recommending
homes
to the
doesn't,
city commission that that's
not
not
warranted, correct.
warranted. Okay, overall children's safety issue, that's my third one. Several people mentioned it. It's a pedestrian-friendly environment right now. Obviously, nobody wants any more cars than they need on there. Is there going to be sidewalks? What else is being done to provide for pedestrian safety?
Correct. So from an engineering standpoint, we're providing per city code sidewalks on one side of the street with ADA ramps and striping. And then, anything additional?
I think maybe their concern more was not with the new developments, but with the pedestrian safety on Deer Creek Lane.
Yeah, that's what
And that's why I brought up the fact
they're
that-
concerned with the through traffic through their neighborhood.
That's why I brought up the fact that the city has this sidewalk program that if it's as essential as they feel, then they could go in with the city and build sidewalks.
Sidewalks are difficult because in the places in the city where there are sidewalks, theoretically, the homeowner paid for them when they bought the home. So for the city to go back and do sidewalks after the fact, you're basically providing a benefit from all the taxpayers for that homeowner. So we do have the sidewalk program now where it's extremely friendly. You can get 50% from the city, and we can set you up on a special assessment over 7 years to do your 50% or cash. So that is available. I think the main question is that what's the traffic flow going to be when phase 2 is connected? And will that pedestrian safety be something that's addressed in that traffic study for phase 2? Because I think that is the concern, is the through traffic, not anybody in front of a new house. Does that seem fair, Commissioner? Is that the question that we're trying to get an answer to? And so who's doing it? So traffic study expert, is that something that's going to be addressed? Because I think that's a major concern.
And I've seen it addressed in traffic studies. Most traffic studies I've seen, they've just done counts on how much traffic is coming through. As far as the sidewalk in those areas, I'm sure it can be accommodated by part of the study, but it's not. It's like I said, it's kind of off the land, and it's kind of more in the city jurisdiction. Like, I'm sure it'll make recommendations, but like I said, it'll be more of a phase 2 subject. Given the traffic count.
My thought is when that road is going to connect up and people are going to come through in front of those houses, we're going to need to take a look at the road. And usually, if it's the unimproved road I'm thinking of, it doesn't have any storm drainage, it doesn't have any sidewalks or curbs. And there's several ways through a CID, through the sidewalk program to start alleviating those pedestrian concerns in that area. Those aren't anything that you guys are going to be able to fix through your project, but it is a problem that you're going to create by developing phase 2 and beyond. So we need to have confidence as a commission that we're going to address that when the time comes. I don't think that's a phase 1 thing because it's not even going to connect up,
Yeah.
but I think it's a legitimate concern. And we need to give people confidence that it's going to be looked at and given them alternatives for fixing it. There's a couple of comments I wrote down, like Free King is unsafe and Quincy is inadequate, and what's the long-term plan? And I think those are fantastic questions, but they're very difficult to answer. Free King is on the east side of our community. Quincy is currently, the next phase is being designed, and $7 million has been targeted to take it to Rouse. I'm looking at Cameron, to Rouse. And so then the next phase would obviously be from Rouse, continuing east, and we're getting to where you're talking about. But, you know, when we build $7 million roads and how often is a difficult thing. Now, developers can do a lot of road work. Gary Dennett's floating around here somewhere. I think I saw him. I know he's built a few roads. He hasn't used the RID, but I think that's a legitimate question. But once again, I'm not sure that's a phase one question because, but it's, I can tell you our long-term plan, my long-term plan is we're going to get Quincy that 3 lanes all the way over to Free Kings. But I'm going to have to do it at the mercy of the commissioners, and we'll have to do it in time. And that next piece is $7 million, so you can understand how expensive it is. But I think I don't have anything to say on Free Kings. I mean, I haven't talked to Matt about it. If anybody wants to get up here and tell me what the future of that road is, it's got deep ditches, half of it we don't even own, and it's.
Well, half of it's county road, isn't it?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Half of it's
So
not ours.
you gotta have the county involved in,
So
when
that's
you
a
do
real
anything with
tough
Free
one
King. You're
to-
not gonna just do it to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we can't, it's hard to guarantee that anything's gonna happen good on Free Kings. Although we are putting that entrance in and the road's gonna come in from over there. Patrick, as far as capital improvements, type questions, drainage, do you have, I mean, there's obviously,
Carly asked about home designs, vicinity sketch. I don't know that home designs is anything that you're gonna be able to.
well, let's start off with the 1,200 and 1,500 square foot house. That was an error that was
Yeah, that
transcribed
an
by the
error. Our house is an
contractor.
old design, 1,500, I mean, I think our smallest one right now is 1,600 square foot, it's conceptual, but our biggest one's 1,724, so we're 16 to 1,724 on our spec homes. On the 20 lots.
And anything under 15 would be prohibited.
Right. Yes,
And
we would always follow the city's
I think we need to
ordinance
acknowledge.
for what it's zoned.
I think we need to acknowledge, one of our citizens caught that. And now it was a typo and doesn't mean they would have built anything under 1,500, but we got the information from the consultant. I think they had just lifted it off of a previous one and put it in, and it has been corrected.
What are your price ranges on those houses? That's nice. Approximate.
You're saying average of 200, 210.
Okay, that's what I, so they're not inexpensive houses, but they're not the highest end, but that's still not inexpensive for a lot of folks.
They're affordable houses that people can actually get a loan on and
Yeah.
we could actually sell.
Okay.
That's all the questions that I wrote.
There's a lot of may language, a lot of will language. I think the first thing I'll say to the residents is, I don't think Bart and Nate have ever developed anything this size. I know the city's on their second, and I love Cameron, and I try to have his back all the time. But he's one guy and doesn't have 30 people working under him. We have a desire to help developers when they're here, meet their deadlines and move through things. I think that we usually come up short when we get moving quick, and on the public side, I do think that there's a lot of things that can be addressed long-term about what phase 2 and 3. I know we've spent some money, we've done a bigger plan. It doesn't sound like this group's seen the bigger plan from Fourth to Quincy, but I think that needs to happen. But with regards to Mr. Marietta's comment, and I think it's right on, the idea that the commission would somehow pass ordinances and just blow them off is unrealistic. There's ordinances that set traffic limits. There's ordinances that set rules and regulations. There's ordinances that, quite frankly, adopt regulations that we try to follow with the idea that this commission is a responsible body, and as they see fit, they can waive certain things. I don't think they're waiving speed limits and things like that, but if they decide that they're willing to accept the final work that comes out of a meeting where they combined a preliminary plat and a final plat at the same meeting, because we were trying to help the development team and overlooked, albeit 6 or 10 homeowners. All of our homeowners are very important, and you've spent a lot of money on your properties, and you deserve to have input on what's going on in your neighborhood. So I do think it feels to me like we blew that one. I don't think it was something illegal. I know that the staff asked, hey, we're going to put these together, and we moved through it. But I don't want anybody to get the impression that we're putting you in a position to do something illegal or that we're not listening, that it's different. I think it's something we've done before, and it's something we were trying to do to help you guys out. Most of the things I've got in my notes are touched off on the things we just talked about. So I guess I'd ask all the commissioners, 2 of you that were there last night, please, can we get through, what else do we have? What else should we be talking about?
Were there any other things that came up last night regarding phase one that we haven't addressed?
Is the covenants issue, whatever that is phase one, phase two, when does that come from?
Well, we started adopting the covenants. When we read it, it says if there is a covenant, then it shall be part of the preliminary plat and file, but we did not have one, so therefore, we are working through that right now before.
And it will be filed with the deed once we acquire the property. So
Let
we
me
will
ask-
have a covenant for that area where the custom homes are built. And we did that, we gave up a lot of ground there to protect their investments as well. There's 15 acres there that we have a minimum 2,000 square foot homes. We have 25-foot setbacks, so we felt like that was gonna help with protecting the investments of the neighborhood.
Let me ask you this, because I think this is what some of the residents ask. If we have an ordinance, we have a preliminary plot, whatever it is. You said that wouldn't change going to the final.
It would only
No,
get more
that's-
stringent.
So, why don't we get back to where we were originally, follow the ordinance? You know, approve your preliminary today, 10 days later, come back, nothing's changed, if that agreed with the residents, and approve the final. I don't know where we came combining, I think that's the problem we have when we combine them, and that's not how our ordinance reads. I understand there's a time frame that you are under, but our ordinance, I feel, we should follow, and maybe in the future, we won't have the problem we're having now.
And we asked the question before we started if that could happen because of our time schedule. I mean, we put together a very strenuous date by date by date what we had to hit, and that was one of our first questions that we clarified with the legal team and with the city.
So if we
And
approve,
it's not uncommon practice in other communities that they've done work in, so.
I understand that, but
And
we
it's
have-
not uncommon practice for us.
we have an ordinance that states we approve the preliminary and then the final. I think we need to follow the ordinance, and then we wouldn't be in the position we're in.
So practically, because what's on, the planning and zoning have approved both. So basically, if we did that, we would not approve their recommendation, and we would have them, what would that look like? If we,
Yeah, I mean, that's my question is what does that achieve? I mean, the whole point of, we achieve something by combining them. You got the approval by not, I mean, I guess the main thing is you could just deny it today. But
and then,
I think the bigger question is, you know, how are we going to address all these other issues that are, quite frankly, later phase issues? I don't know. I know Chuck wants to follow the rules, and I appreciate that too. But like I said, we broke the rule to an end to get these guys somewhere. If that's not the case, that's fine if we don't want to do that. But I don't know what just saying, well, let's just go back and wait another meeting and see if something changes. You guys planning on working on the plat between now and the next meeting? I mean, that's the quandary we're in, Commissioner, is
Well,
what does it achieve other than saying, well, we waited the 10 days, which,
I mean, not the phase one plat. I mean, this phase two and phase three is still, you know, like we told.
yeah.
so Larry and
that we
Cheryl?
could-
what
But the
do you-
preliminary plat and the final plat were different
Well, yeah.
last night. They were.
One's preliminary and one's
Yeah,
final.
they were.
But any deviation from the final plat from the intent of the approved preliminary plat as determined by the planning commission shall be disallowed and shall cause the reinitiation of the preliminary platting process. That's according to this, which we've never
Which intention?
followed
Got to talk to the mic,
at all.
please.
And see, last night was a deja vu of past things. It's nothing to do with you guys. It's deja vu. I sat during this meeting last night and I swear I could go back 2.5 years and everything that they were doing and asking, it was the same thing that went through and I was a part of with Silverback. So I'm with Chuck. these are the rules and regulations. We need to follow them. And when we don't, and we deviate from them, but last night, the planning and zoning, it needs to go back before planning and zoning.
I would just ask, what are the meaningful differences that were between the two?
Well, for one, whenever you're getting down to crossing the Ts and dotting the Is, the name of the subdivision, the preliminary plat said Creekside subdivision, the final plat said Creekside East, that's a difference. Number 2, Article 2-103, the preliminary plat, contents, items pertaining to the plat as proposed, the layout and the names of the streets with general dimensions and appropriate grades and their relationship to the adjoining or projected streets or roadways. The preliminary plat had no names, the final plat did. Like I said, when you're talking about crossing the Ts and dotting the Is and following these rules that the city has in place.
So one option is to take their approval of the preliminary plat, take the final plat back to planning and zoning to revote, and then bring it to us? That's following?
Yes.
If you want to follow the strict, there will be 10 days before they can file, which probably would put them outside the notification for the hearing for the final plat. And so you're probably looking at pushing back their project at least 2 months.
But if we would have
Before it would
followed,
be back
if we would
before-
have followed our ordinance, we wouldn't be in this position.
And it's not their fault. It's not Brett or Bart and Nate's fault.
Again, we're here at their request to accelerate it.
And
So,
what I
I
hear
mean, you're-
Darren saying and you saying is that as the commission, we can approve both of them. We can choose to do that.
Yep, that's
Well,
correct.
I think going back to the original intent of Mr. Marietta, the process wasn't followed, so what's the outfall? I mean, if you're talking about the, street names and the name of the subdivision being incorrect, I would say those were insignificant, but if there's something where there was a real breach in the quality of this plat or something, then I think we need to, that's what I think you need to consider is what needs to happen to make
There's
it right.
more than that. It's just that it's not just that. And-
You asked me what it was, and you said.
Well, yeah, I know it for a couple examples.
Well, why don't
So,
you
like I
let's-
said,
This is probably time to put them
okay.
all out there, Commissioner,
Okay, well,
because we've got to make a good decision on this.
explain RP3 zoning when you said R1A. Where's the RP3 fall into play?
That has always been the zoning of it, it's just that RP3 was the, and I'll let you explain it. You explained it
Just
last
what
night.
part of the
He
RP3?
explained it last night, so.
Yeah, on the final plat, there's an area there that talks about the setbacks. And it spells out, it's zoned R1A, and for the lots 21 through 26, it's uses the RP3 setbacks for those 6 lots. It doesn't rezone those 6 lots, it uses the setbacks that are spelled out in RP3 for those 6 lots, which they spelled it. They might have left that off completely and just said it was zoned R1A and listed the setbacks there because those will carry with those parcels going forward. It's just a matter of confusion.
Is that setback not the drainage point? That's the ditch.
What's your next
no.
question,
Yeah.
Cheryl?
Sure, what's the next area?
Okay, why was this not included? The 4-107 regulation for drainage plan, which he's talking about. The developer shall include a drainage plan as required by section 2-103, 2B4, and shall design the stormwater facilities according to the stormwater drainage master plan for the city. Drainage plans shall include, but are not limited to, complete drainage area map showing the natural drain area boundaries and direction of the surface flow, any large impervious areas, existing and proposed streets, man-made or natural obstructions to be avoided for storm drain locations, runoff calculations for existing and for developed conditions and proposed inlet locations. Explain that one.
So with the submittal, we submitted a drainage report. I don't know if we have that
Yeah.
accessible here, but it was submitted with the plans to city staff for review. covering that. Usually, like I said, on the preliminary plat, we show preliminary drainage facilities. And like I said, then with the drainage report, we show the impervious area. So that's usually not shown on the preliminary plat. That's shown in the technical report that we give city staff. I also want to just note on the preliminary plat discussion from earlier, in my experience, when I take a preliminary plat, Barton and them, they're only, when they came to us, they're only interested in the first 26 lots at this point. We presented a preliminary plat for all of it on a good faith effort that we wanted to show you at this point that this is where we want to head in the future. And this is kind of where we're going, even though our intention was to develop those 26 lots at this time. Because I think theoretically we could have done a preliminary plat just for the 26 lots and not show anything in the future. Like I said, we wanted to do it for all of it to show you guys that, hey, we want to be completely transparent, and this is exactly where we want to go in the future. But this is what we're asking, right now with the approvals. That's pretty typical with what I see on preliminary plats in other communities.
And so those documents being submitted to city staff, did you report on those documents last night, even though maybe they weren't included? A picture was included. I mean, you reported on the stormwater runoff, correct? And that you met all the requirements?
Correct, in the technical drainage report.
Yes, okay.
And it's pointed out several times during the meeting last night where the drainage was and that it did meet the standards. In fact, it also picks up part of that phase 2, which is not being under consideration at this point. So it's plenty good size, or it's oversized for phase 1, if you just looked at it strictly as the phase 1.
So how do lots 21 through 26 compare to Peyton's Hamlet 4?
Size-wise?
Size of?
Yes, and
75 by
I know the square footage of
75 by 150.
is a lot, it's like half the difference, in keeping with Peyton's Hamlet being, the size houses that they are. And this is right across from them, I take it. So are you guys talking about keeping in line with them so it keeps their value of their houses up, along
Yes.
with the rest of the houses that are on Deer Creek Road?
Yes,
Or Deer Run Lane?
so our line would go up to the second phase, and that line would square off with the hedgerow. I don't know if you saw it last night, but it completely squares off with the other lots above it. So the custom line comes from phase 2 all the way down. So 29, 28, 27, it would be above that line.
Okay, and so each of, like he has, 1 acre, and you got 3/4 of an acre on each of your 6?
Yes, so if you can see my cursor, it would be this line right here.
Okay.
And those might even become custom homes as we move north.
Is that it? Is there anything else, Cheryl?
Nope.
Larry, do you have any?
No.
Well, I do have one more question. Article 2-104 on the final plat. Did you, as far as the application, you filed all the necessary copies to the zoning administrator? Because last night I know that there was some questions about his notes and things like that. So, I mean,
I believe the question was the final plat in the packet, and the question was answered, it was included, if I remember right.
Right. And also, that was given more than 10 days in advance of the meeting as well.
and they had all that last night.
Yes, they did.
I think why there's so much confusion, there was little discussion amongst the P&Z last night. There was, but it just wasn't to the point where it asked you know, they answered all their questions. And,
I think we need to keep in mind, they're just citizens. I mean, they're just citizens like us in terms of, you know.
I understand that,
I mean-
but they're on a very important
Well,
board
I
that makes
agree.
very important decisions.
But-
And just being on a board does not, I mean, it carries a lot of weight. And that's why I was, you know, I keep referring back to this, but you just wonder if everyone understands all the rules and regulations. Again, I keep falling back to this, and I'm, like I said, I'm sorry to you guys for that, but that was a big deal, and it still is. So that's all I have to say.
Mayor, do you have any recommendations on, there's 10 people in our audience that have had questions, and as much as I respect our ability to write stuff down and parrot them back,
To open it up.
I'd hate to think that you guys are gonna, you know, take a vote without just assuming that somehow we miraculously answered all the questions. But I do think the problem with some of these boards, and I think what the mayor was referring to, is we have citizens that sometimes get in a situation where the meeting blows up on them and they don't have any control over it, and people start having conversations and it goes. And we obviously have controlled it tonight, but I want to make sure people, as many people as we can get, walk out of this room feeling like
Okay,
we're trying to help the developers,
we'll
we're trying to help them.
Reopen public comment.
Before we do that,
Sure.
I think if we get back to the ordinance, just follow the ordinance we have on the book, preliminary and the final. I understand the rush to time frame, but we have an ordinance. If we follow the ordinance, we wouldn't have the issue that we're having.
And that's on the table. So you want to wait 2 months to go back through it, and that's a legitimate option. I mean, that's the question that's before you. But I still think we should try to hear from as many of the
Yeah,
citizens
exactly.
that may
See if
have
this
a
answers their
follow-up.
questions.
I think two things. As we go forward with other developments, I have no issue with following the ordinance, even though we have a legitimate right to vote the way we have done in the past. The second thing is, I think the next time we have this kind of a development come up that's going to impact a residential area, we ought to get together with the residents, have signboards with the pictures, have a question and answer, and try to get these things worked out and get the neighbors on board with the project. I would like to see that so we don't have this kind of an issue the next time.
That's very good.
Yeah, it feels like, it honestly feels like if you would have just stuck to phase one, you probably wouldn't even be here. But you tried to put a long-term plan out there, and we hadn't run it by anybody in the community. I mean, so for the first time, they're seeing 100 houses around their homes. And
We don't know that phase two is gonna happen, you know?
yeah, we don't know tomorrow's gonna happen, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I was just saying, I think we
Let's leave
owe it
phase
to our
two in
citizens
phase
to give
two.
them a heads up on, you know, hey, if something's, I mean, I've got a lot of confidence. I think you guys are gonna build hundreds of homes, I hope, but I do think we've caught the cart before the horse a little bit on that future phasing. Phase one is our focus, and phase one should be what we're looking at this evening and
Okay,
trying to
so
get
let's go back.
our citizens up to speed on phase one issues.
So let's reopen public comments related to phase one. If anyone in the audience has a question specific to phase one, would welcome you to come forward and ask.
You gentlemen might not go too far.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah,
go
we're not
too far
answering
from
them,
the
you
mic.
are.
Michael Marietta, 4 Deer Run Lane. Being an old school teacher, I'm going to say lack of planning on your part should not create a catastrophe on the city's part, and they have to rush through something. You got rules, you should follow the rules. If you don't, then why do we have these? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Marietta, I'm sorry, I did not mean to spin you. I believe some of the drainage issues were yours from the west side.
No, they're not mine. They're Dr.
No,
Sigley's.
I'm sorry, Dr. Sigley, I apologize for confusing you guys.
There's-
Can I get you,
Yeah,
get you
come
to come up
forward,
there?
please.
Nobody can hear you at home if we're not up near the mic. Thank you, sorry about that.
Well, I have to take a hearing aid off too, or two. Oh, I lost one on the way.
We'll get it.
Well, we have to hear you, you don't have to hear us.
Let me first say that that's not a ditch. That was originally a silage storage area, which means it's quite uneven. And to improve it, you would have to, right now, they're looking at 90 feet. 90 feet is not going to do it. They're going to have to extend it at least another 100 or 120 feet to get it over the humps to drain downward toward the creek. So once that happens, then they'll be fine with that area. But it's going to be a little bit more costly to get it down there. Like I said, it was originally a silage storage area, so it only goes maybe at the most 80 feet. Because I can remember when I talked to the old man who used it years ago, long before he died, that's what he told me it used for. It had a second usage. When it wasn't silage, he would back his truck up and he would load his cattle at the end of it. You'll notice how it goes, I don't know if you've been out there, it goes straight down and then out. And you say to yourself, well, how did a ditch appear why did a ditch appear right there? Well, it's because it had a dual use for the original farmer there. I'm not sure who that was. So I think that they could certainly correct that.
So does that need to be addressed in phase one, or could it be something?
It's part of phase one if it's gonna, you're talking about these homes right here well, can you bring this up somehow? How do I bring this up? We need to, well, down here is part of phase one, okay? What you're looking at, this line right here, is where the drainage is going through. So, and this is part of phase one, as is that up there.
So then, with that brought up, Bart and Nate, what's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that it doesn't affect the actual plat, that's more the design, and we can easily address that in an addendum with the design team.
Yes, so on the specifics of that ditch, like I said, it's not shown on a plat because it's not an item that's going to be on a plat. It's going to be on the grading plan in the construction documents where we actually show some regrading of that ditch in there within that 40-foot drainage easement.
Okay. Anybody else?
Did you?
My name is Jessica Michael. I live at 2207 Porter Lane. First I have a question. The phase one, would that be where it comes onto from Free King?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was talking about the first phase then. So Free King Highway is right, like it runs beside our house basically. And that road, which was discussed earlier, is already terrible. Parts of it are unsafe. Some of it is caving in up the road. But also where our, so it'd be our
Are you
east
on
side.
Porter Lane?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the corner of Porter and
Kings Highway?
Mhm.
Okay.
And so right there, we already have water issues. We've addressed it with the city. They've actually come out to our property, said they were gonna fix it. A month later, said they weren't. They came and dug a smidge in, how did they even do our ditch? What do you call it?
Just cleaned out
The debris or?
What was it, like we mow it, we keep that area mowed up to it'd be the north, basically, doesn't stay clear there. So what my question is where is the water and like where it goes into, so from Free King into the new addition, how is that water gonna be drained where it won't come down an already problematic area? So that's one of my big questions. And also, me and other residents have called the police department, I don't know how many times, because of where the high school gets out, it comes and it goes up, they go up Porter Lane, that was addressed earlier. And last night, I have 3 small children. So we are outside constantly, but we are set back away from Free King enough to where, and we play in the backyard mostly. So, I mean, it is mostly safe right there. We feel very safe for the most part until the school is out. But if there is more people coming out onto freaking highway, there's already congestion from the high school all going north. But then when they come south, then they race up our road on Porter Lane. The police know it's a problem. They sit out there. They even say it's a problem. And so I just wonder, I mean, why that was like, you know, when it was proposed to the city, why that wasn't even, it sounds like, I mean, I don't know any of this stuff. This is all like foreign to me, but it just seems like that wasn't even thought of on how freaking was already like, I mean, students walk from the high school to areas around there already on freaking, and it's already an unsafe road. But then if we add more people driving down that road that live there, it just seems, you know, like, and it sounds like that road won't even be fixed for years to come because it's going to be a major undertaking with the county versus the city, let alone money and funding when we're in a pandemic. So I just don't see how that is. I mean, so I just had questions on that. So I don't know.
Good. So traffic and drainage. Does anybody want to touch the drainage where the water goes? I'm looking at Matt because he's probably.
Thank you.
It didn't affect her.
So I can speak to where the drainage is going on site there. There's a culvert under Free Kings Highway right now that's located near Tract A as part of Phase 1 of this plat. Kind of as I discussed earlier, we're going to be directing that portion of Phase 1 to a retention pond, and then that retention pond will fill up and then slowly release to that existing culvert at pre-existing rates. So as far as the immediate drainage on site, which I can only control, we're reducing the amount of water that's being delivered to that culvert under Free Kings Highway. I don't know, Matt, if you want to.
Yeah, from that part, you're still on the railroad right-of-way, and so it's utilizing the railroad right-of-way to go ahead and edge to the east, where she sets onto the south of that property and around the curve from. And there's a box culvert through there that kicks all that back across to the east into the creek. And as far as your existing condition, we've checked for water leaks. That is part of a mining underwater issue that drains out, and I've got a handful of them in town. The water comes subsurface, that's not coming from water leak or water main.
Well, and we're not even
And
talking about
drainage
that.
through that, on your other issue.
That
just
went away.
so
That
we're-
wasn't the issue. It's the issue
Yeah.
actually coming from.
But from there,
the
where their
north to
pond
the
is,
south.
right there, so you've got the railroad spur, the old railroad spur that they're putting that road off right now, that helps kick some of that water back to the creek. If you get down around the box culvert, or around the curve, you got another box culvert in there that also helps shed all that water before.
So that water goes into the big creek that's beside us this
Yes,
big?
to the east.
Okay, so that creek, it backs up, and, I mean, there's pictures of it that was backed up a year ago over the road, so how is that how is putting more water into it gonna?
The way stormwater regulations are, is they do calculations on that, and they do calculations as to how that water runs off from a field today, because water runs off a field today. And they run those calculations, and they design that detention, so that detention will release at or at a lesser rate than it would from a current grass field, at its current condition. That is currently a grass field. So that detention is designed by the numbers, calculated through, that water will release from that detention. It can still run, but at or at a lesser rate than it runs off the surface of the grass today.
Well, what about where the Peyton's area, and then it'd be the first up to Phase 1, that area comes down and it goes to a creek that runs behind our house, like directly behind our house, and we've asked for that to be set as an easement, so you guys would clear all that out and where all those homes come down, and they said it would, and then they called me back and said, we decided not to do that. When they were out there, they were like, oh, we'll definitely turn that new easement, clear it out, that is a drainage area, we know that, and then
From the,
What, a month later,
from the
they were
north,
like,
from the
no.
north side of your property. Okay, we'll talk about that issue on
Yeah,
the
it's-
car.
yeah,
We'll discuss that on a
That's,
separate occasion.
so are you saying that's not related to the
Phase 1, because they
plat?
have
Okay.
to know where that water comes down.
Okay.
So you're gonna talk about that issue
Yes.
and the detention pond that's going to be put in will alleviate some of their concerns, you're saying?
Off this east side coming through there on the detention pond.
Is that a good answer for you?
Yeah, I think we just need to have a discussion, not about the bill, but just about the drainage and.
Yeah, it's a tough area. I mean, I have plenty of tough areas around town, but I'll give you a card. We'll have more sit down talks about it.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Jessica, I don't, as far as the traffic, you said it really well. I mean, off of Free Kings, Matt may have a hand in traffic too.
So on the traffic part, I know we've ran the stealth stat. We know it's tough. We reach out to USD 250 every year. We know obviously with the pandemic.
I'm sorry, but if there are people watching at home, they're not going to be
Yeah,
able
sorry.
to hear you. So,
Yeah.
sorry,
Okay.
you might have to turn
You're
it back
speaking to the
you.
microphone.
So as far as Free Green traffic, we're aware of it. PD's aware of it. We always reach out to 250, try to encourage their officers. Whether it feels like it or not, when we put in the four-way stop at 4th and Free Kings, now that it allows stop and go traffic to make that left turn, and Chuck, you probably know it better than anybody. We feel like we saw some of that reduction of that traffic making that right-hand turn out of the PHS parking lot, and I think USC 250. Maybe someone will come back and tell me that never happened, but that some of that right-hand turn traffic going towards Quincy and Rouse backed off a little bit before pandemic. That doesn't mean that there's still not the few that are still racing. We have the same problem at Bittner, going around Bittner, racing through there as well. I mean, I don't know how we'll ever do it, but we continue to reach out with 250 and with PD and do that. And, maybe it's time to look at other traffic calming devices
Matt.
in the short stretch.
There's some things that we're just not going to solve
Yeah.
tonight.
Let's keep
Yeah.
rolling.
So-
Thank you.
People have been very patient, and thank you, Jessica.
So, any other comments? Anyone else like to come forward related to phase one? So I would like to refresh. Help me understand, if we do nothing tonight and we go back and follow the ordinance, as everyone said, what does that do? What's the steps, and what does that do to the timeline for the developers?
Look at just considering that we've got the approval of the preliminary plat yesterday. 10 days from then, we can accept them to file the final plat for that. And I'll have to double check, but I think we may be outside of the notice period for us to be able to put it on to the August Planning Commission meeting.
But there's nothing to say that they couldn't schedule a special meeting, or, how would that work in order to facilitate this?
If it's the desire of the commission for them to hold a special meeting, we can see if the board can convene, I say at the commission's direction.
I'd be in favor of that.
Could
I would too.
convene Zoom or something.
Right, so then what does that do so then at which of our meetings? It would be the second meeting in August that it would come to us? Because we wouldn't necessarily be able to pull that off by the first meeting?
I don't think you'd be able to, I say, because you're still looking at 10 days. I think the notice period is at least 21 days once it's put in the paper. If I remember correctly, I want to go back and double check all that. And then that's when the Planning Commission would be able to hold a vote or hold the hearing on it. And then at that conclusion of the hearing, make a recommendation to the committee, to the commission.
So most likely that would be our second meeting in August.
August 25th.
August 25th.
And then what's the time frame after that for them to get going, once we voted on it?
Oh.
Is there a delay, or is there a?
Is that they would have to answer on their side with the, if they're waiting for the clearance period on the RID or items like that, they would have to answer that on their business side. But
Well,
I
let's
think
ask them
August
to stand
25th would
back
be
there.
optimistic.
Let's let them speak to their time frame, Cameron. You guys understand the question? Oh, sorry, I thought you were standing over there, Nate. Come sneaking out of the side.
I guess I'd like to hear the question again.
I couldn't quite hear it.
Yeah.
when we looked at it, if it didn't pass today and we didn't get to republish it for the 21 days, and then we had to put the notification back in for the ordinance itself, it was like a 60-day to get back in front of everybody.
Essentially, it put us right in the middle of winter, probably starting this, and everybody knows what that's like, construction's like in the wintertime, so.
I understand. Does that answer your question?
Yep, thoughts? Larry?
Well, how do we just approve the first phase? We as a commission is the one that have let these rules slide. So we need to make a motion somewhere to take care of that situation, so that we either do away with it and say you can do them both at the same time. That's an option. And maybe that's the way to do it. And then that takes away the argument away from that. You can do them both at the same time and move on, because there's times we may want to expedite some things. And that might be the better way to do it, but at least get it out, and then whatever we decide, then live with it. But that would take care of one of those issues. But how do we get you going where you could do phase one?
Yeah.
Because phase one doesn't affect a lot of this other stuff that we've been hashing, and obviously you discussed last night.
And we have to go back before the commission, or the planning and zoning on phase two, and the commission on phase two, so. Really, just the vote tonight would allow us to start on phase one.
Well, I think that projects delayed are projects denied, and we've seen it time and time again. We're still arguing about Silverback, and it's now 2 years old. And there's no sticks out of the ground. And I'd like to, see a project get moving, actually. You guys are not from, Memphis or Mars. You're local guys. You're not going to be doing work in New York City or somewhere else. We don't have to worry about the project not getting done. If you fail, you're going to fail here locally, where you are at and your families are at. You have to live with that. But I would like to see the project get started on phase one.
I'm with you on that, Larry. I think it's time. It seems like we all voted on the fact that we need these houses. It's an economic development thing for the city. We can't keep people with high-income jobs in town if we don't have these houses. Let's let this go forward, and if we need to change the way we do business in the future, let's deal with that at that time. But let's go ahead and get these guys working, spending their money.
Well, I think we need, the world's upside down with the pandemic. We need jobs. You're going to have plumbing jobs, construction jobs, carpenters, electricians, concrete being poured, rock and gravel handled. Jobs are badly needed, as well as the housings and the jobs are chicken and an egg. We need both. You got to have the jobs and you need the housing. But we need to move some of these things forward.
So is there someone that would like to make a motion to approve the recommendation?
Well, before we do that, I want to make sure that the people that came tonight with their concerns, all of them have been answered. And if we move forward to phase one, you're all right with that?
Yeah, all of them related to phase one, because we definitely need to answer a lot of their questions with regards to phase two.
Phase one, yes.
So, yeah.
Right.
Great.
So I'll ask one more time. Is there any concerns regarding phase one that we've left unaddressed? Knowing that phase two, there
Yes,
are
phase
things
two.
that we need to,
Yes.
at whatever point it makes sense.
So you're going to vote to not follow the rules that you have written?
We're going to vote to follow the way we've done business before.
Which is the prerogative of the commission.
Which is the prerogative of this commission.
And then we will fix it.
And then we'll fix it.
And I move to approve this recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Phase one only, right?
Phase one only.
So that's clear,
yes.
okay.
So there's been a motion and a second to approve the recommendation by the planning and zoning to approve the plat for phase one of Creekside. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 3-2. All right, thank you, everyone. So we'll move into non-agenda reports and requests. Darren?
So yeah, real quick, Blake talked about the sales tax was up 0.61% for the year. It's only 5 months, but that's fantastic news, as we've done a lot to prepare for the worst, and hopefully right now we haven't seen it. Cameron's got two other things.
Okay, let's wait a minute till everyone clears out.
Wanted to let the commission as well as the public know that we have had the completion of the Memorial Drive Trail. Here, we've got some pictures of it. You can see the west end there. This continues on there. One thing I'd also like to note out or give thanks to is the YMCA was also able to put in a sidewalk that connects their building over to this trail as well at a crossing that was put in as part of the project.
That's great.
So that tied in very well together. And while the pictures looked great earlier, now they look grainy.
Mine looks like we're having a storm.
But yeah, you can see the ball fields heavily used. I know that we found a few people riding bikes and walking on it before it was officially opened. Unfortunately, it was after the concrete had already hardened, so we don't have any marring of it. So it's a great project, and so it'll be a great amenity to the park and to the public. The other note is that the 69 bypass at 20th Street is now completed and fully open there. You can see a picture. You don't see any asphalt patches or anyone's transmission sitting along the side of the roadway. So that is fortunately all done. And like I say, I'd like to call out to cost contractor. Was it they had 110 working days? They got it done in less than 80.
Wow.
I say we had some very good weather, and they also had the benefit of being on a pavement surface. They're only putting a 6-inch overlay over that, so when it did rain, we didn't have to worry about wet underground or anything like that. So they did an excellent job on that, and it's back open for business.
It sure is nice.
I just have a couple things. I had the honor this afternoon of presenting a proclamation to Marianne Bouchard. She's 100 today. And so, you know, obviously not inviting her here, but I went to the house, and so today is Marianne Bouchard today, celebrating her 100th birthday, so.
Happy
birthday, Marianne.
Happy birthday.
And then I think Darren shared, a wonderful letter from a family that really appreciated that we kept Kittyland open. They had a family death, and the family needed some relief from their grief, and they took the kids to Kittyland, and they just expressed their appreciation to the city to keep it open, because it really helped them through this. So I just wanted to
I got
share.
a call from that family, and I called Darren. He made sure that was done, so I thank you, Darren, for doing that for the family.
Yeah, you know, the staff, it's been a tough year on them because they don't get to provide a lot of the fun summer stuff, but they were adamant the Kittyland was going to stay open, and Kittyland stayed, so the pool and everything else, whatever, but Kittyland made it, and it made the family happy, so happy to do it. I wish we could have done more this summer, but it was what it was. Thanks, Chuck.
Anything
Thanks,
else?
Dawn.
I do.
Yeah.
Jay, is he still here? Oh, yeah, there he is. I was wondering if you could give us an update on the CDBG CV grant.
Sure, I appreciate, we were going to talk about it at the last session. I get to take my mask off. Okay. Yes, I'm pleased to announce that we opened up the CDBG CV grant funding program. This is money that came down from the state directly to the cities. The city applied for the money, we got the money. It's not a ton of money. It's $127,000 for businesses businesses who have had impacted by the COVID pandemic. We have also $35,000 to support meals programs in the community as well. And there's 2 separate applications for those. You can go to our website. It's pittks.org, and if you hit /CDBG-CV, you can go. It'll take you to the site to make the applications. The application's a little long. I think I mentioned that before. It's because of all the rules that the CDBG and HUD has for applications of these types. But if you have any questions, there's an email. You can submit some questions. If you have any issues, of course, you can call City Hall, and we'll help you with it.
You want to share about the spark money through the
Oh, yeah,
county?
the Spark money is a different program. It's actually the same federal act, the CARES Act, that funds the Spark program. The Spark program is money, again, coming from the state, but this Spark money went to the county, all right? And the county is, and this was a lot more money. This was $7.8 million that came to the county. The county's allocated the money for a variety of purposes, a variety of organizations, healthcare organizations, to the school districts, and the county has made an allocation to those different groups. The cities get some money, some more money as well, a smaller amount, but some more money. And that program is on the county's website. If you go into the county's website, Crawford County, Kansas, and then then type in Spark, you'll see that right away. Or do a search on Spark, you'll see the process for doing that. That's a little bit easier, the way that money came down. It's a little bit easier to apply for that money, and there's a lot more available to us.
Is
So
that different than the money it's different than the money we've got, but
It is.
Crawford County got the same type of CDBG money.
That's a good point. There's some CDBG money that went to the city, there's some CDBG money that went to the county, and there's CDBG money that went to Girard as well.
I think today they were talking about that at the commission meeting, and they were supposed to post it on their website.
So that's an option.
For any businesses just outside the city limits, that
right.
doesn't apply to.
And we're trying to avoid overlap. If you're in the city limits, you apply for it through the city. If
Right.
you're outside the city limits, you apply for it in the county. If you're in Girard, you apply for it in Girard.
And I'm sorry, can you apply for CDBG, CV, and Spark money?
You can, but you have to state that you're applying for both, all right? So, and we are going to compare, so we don't want to overlap and pay for things, give grants for things twice.
So Pittsburgh businesses.
Pittsburgh businesses especially. I mean, Pittsburgh is 80% of the businesses
But the Spark
in Crawford.
money that you're talking about.
Both, for both.
Okay.
A lot fell through the cracks, but just keep in mind, the hiring freeze is over. Numerous police and fire vacancies are going to be filled. Appreciate the patience of our community, and hopefully we can maintain these numbers for the rest of the year.
I have another question.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. When are we going to open City Hall up again?
And City Hall's open.
What, the front door? Come in?
I don't envision we'll ever open the lobby up again. We're actually trying to rework it so we don't have the lobby issues that we've had in the past. It's pretty much done by call center. Jay's got 3 bids this week on the kiosk out front. So there'll be a drive-through kiosk. It'll be receipt driven, but you can come to City Hall, and if you want to sign in and get checked and put a mask on, you're welcome to come into City Hall. But I don't envision a day, unless somehow this pandemic and everything changes immediately, that we're going to be opening up the employees to have to deal with the public in hand-to-hand combat when it's not necessary.
Well, that's a complaint I have from several people about City Hall, because other businesses are doing that, and that's a complaint they have, that why City Hall's not doing what other businesses have done. And
I understand that. So what's your rationale to do it? If it's public safety is not important enough for the employees, or what are you saying?
No, I didn't say that. Everybody that does it with the plexiglass, they're concerned about public safety, and it seems to work. They just feel like the city of Pittsburgh ought to follow everybody else's lead and do the same thing they're doing.
Well, we're trying to be leaders in this, and we're being consistent with what other communities are doing. And employees' safety is my #1 priority behind the communities. And we have operated for nearly 4 months with no glitches on serving our customers, whether it's permitting, whether it's plan review, whether it's taking water payments. I think it's working, and obviously I will continue to hear from all of you and take your input. But at this point, I'm very comfortable that we are operating in a fashion that's the safest environment for our employees and our community. And for the long term, that's the plan.
And still getting the job done.
Oh, they're definitely getting the job done.
Really.
Anything else?
I have a question. Let's, stay all night, I guess, so. What are we going to do about the ordinance so that we need to get it on the agenda and get something written to either, we're going to follow it or we're going to combine them? We need to have that discussion.
We're gonna meet this week, and we're gonna review our options, and we're gonna come back to you at the next meeting with a recommendation.
Very good.
And feel free to, let us know what you think if you want us to write it a certain way. But The ordinance is available for everybody to read. We read it 6 times to today's meeting, so
Yeah.
everybody knows what it says, but we'll get you a recommendation right away.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? The motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second. Moved by Patrick, seconded by Don. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, everyone.